All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Maneuver Life Radio. This is episode 8. My name is Tony, and I'm accompanied with Dean here today, and we have a great discussion on fake jobs, the fake economy, and the money is fake. So we're going to talk about what a fake job is, how do you maneuver around a fake job, and how do you maneuver around the fake economy. We'll get into all that from in terms of philosophy, politics, and metacognition. So that's part A, which is a great conversation, and we did a good job on kind of breaking all that stuff down. So part B, we're doing a Reddit Q&A, bringing that back into the equation, and we've got 3 pretty good questions from Reddit here. We've got one about how the patriarchy is the reason why you're failing, and kind of how to address that. 2 is a young couple with an unplanned pregnancy, and that one's interesting because we've got 2 different perspectives on it, one from a religious perspective and one from a secular perspective. So we're going to jump into that as well, which is interesting, so check on that one. And then the third question is kind of about hypergamous preferences and what is the maneuver prescription to deal with hypergamous preferences from women, and also like why aren't they honest about those preferences. So stay tuned for the whole episode, and you'll see kind of those Reddit questions broken down and dissected in a good way, in a digestible way. And that's basically it. So basically, I want you guys to go ahead and like the video and just pre-like it because this one's going to be a banger. So pre-like the video, subscribe to the channel for more content, and we're going to give you guys some clips of it too later. So thank you guys so much for tuning in, and here you go for the episode. We are talking about the economy today, and I think a lot of it comes down to fake jobs and what is a fake job, what is a fake economy, what is fake money. And you'll notice I didn't say what is the economy, what are jobs, what is money, because it's kind of the same thing. So we'll get into why that is and what that all is today. So I think the most important thing to take home at the end of this episode will be, how do I move forward with this information? And we're going to give you a maneuver life prescription for all these problems, because we're not just going to be that channel that says, hey, here's a big problem in your life, and then not give you a solution. That would just be kind of a frustrating thing to deal with. So kicking it over to you, as I always do in the beginning of these episodes, is what exactly is a fake job in your view?
Okay, so fake job. When I hear the term fake job, and you're the one who brought this up last week as the topic, and I thought it was really good. Um, there are certain positions in companies that don't actually add any value to whatever product it is that they're selling. It simply exists either as like some sort of, esoteric rules enforcement, HR, for example, or as a as some sort of like money sink to help them show lower profits at the end of the year. And I work in marketing, I do a lot of copywriting, so I'm going to throw myself under the bus. A lot of marketing falls into this because marketing is one of those things, and this probably applies also to other types of fake jobs. Marketing is sort of it's an art and a science, and there's no obvious way to market stuff all the time. So people kind of just throw stuff at the wall and see what sticks, and they know that that's what they're doing, and they're okay with it because, as I said, it's like a money sink, which is helpful on your taxes.
Right.
So anyway, our economy is at this point right now, and it has been for a while, where we're very bloated. There's this like credit system. Maybe we can get into that. There's a lot of money flowing around that's not accessible to you and I, of course, because it's there's money there's tons of money in the economy, but it's not in a useful place, right? Like it's not there to help us, you and I, buy a house or get a car or whatever we want, live life and have a decent quality of life. It's there to help shareholders uh, make more money on their
Right.
shares,
Right.
basically.
And I think,
So
to kind of put things in perspective here, I do have a little scenario that I want to kind of run by you. For me,
mhm,
whenever I meet somebody, and this is kind of ridiculous that this is the word I'm going to use the word refreshing. But whenever I meet somebody and we don't talk about work, it's actually refreshing. So if I meet somebody,
oh yeah,
if I know somebody in real life and I've known them for more than 6 months and I don't know what their job is, it's a rare thing that happens. And that's a
awesome.
rare, refreshing
Yeah,
thing because I don't
yeah,
care. No offense. Unless it's
right.
something really edge case where they're uniquely enthused about like specifically what they're doing for work and like and everything, but it's never that. It's usually I work at this company. The first thing they tell me is like this is my degree. Then the next thing is I work at this company. Like that's usually what they tell me. Hey, how's it going? My
Yep.
name's Tony. What's your name? Oh, my name is employee number 6, and I work for this botnet company, and this is what I like to do. This is basically all I know because I'm dialed into work 8 hours a day. I don't have any other kind of hobbies. I just think about work. I talk about work, and whenever I have drama in my life, it's work related. So I have to bring that over to my other aspect in my social life and say, hey, oh my goodness,
Yep.
this person doesn't know me at all, but he probably knows a lot about my drama and my work, so I'm going to converse with him as if he's my coworker. So that's kind of what I'm thinking about is when I meet somebody that doesn't think about that 100% of the day and they think, hey, my job is actually just a kind of a tool for me to make money and that's it. And then afterwards, I can kind of think about things that aren't work. They are somebody to me who is exactly who this video is not for. And that is somebody who doesn't think of their job as a way for them to find purpose, right? So, and I
Right.
may think, oh, the video is not for me. Well, it's still for, stay tuned because there's still some caveats there. But most of the people I know, they actually don't have purpose in their life unless they have a job. And I think it's the cat chasing the horse situation. I might not know the cat chasing the mouse or wrong end of this candle, what have you.
Yeah.
But it's really an
Yeah.
opportunity for you to make money, and then you need that money to pay rent and et cetera. So you're going to optimize how do I not hate my job the most, right? So back over to you, I guess. Are you refreshed when you find somebody in real life that doesn't talk about work constantly and in that kind of avenue?
Absolutely, man. I mean, as you said, there's like we talked a bit about this in like the episode we did about vetting and maintaining, right? You certain people you meet, well, every person that you meet, you can tell so much about them just based on the first thing that they want to talk about, right? If you meet some guy in the gym and he wants to talk to you about sports, right, and it's the first thing he's talking to you about, and he's really excited about whatever football game just happened, right? Now it just tells you so much about where this guy's mind's at, right? Like what types of things he's doing in his free time, which is most of our time, or it should be really. If he's consuming sports to such a degree that that's pretty much all he can really talk about, then I know right away this guy's like not really locked into anything. He's not doing anything interesting. He just sort of consumes this mass media, and that's very pacifying. And here's the thing: I enjoy sports, but it's like I don't want to talk about that all the time. The same thing is true of work. Now it's very rare. It is possible that you meet somebody who does work that's very interesting and fulfilling, and like they want to talk about it. And in those cases, great. you know but what is the distinction there? The distinction is that they're talking about the thing that brings them purpose, and it just so happens to be work. You
Right.
know what I'm saying?
Right.
So what I'm looking for when I'm meeting somebody new is, are you locked into something, right? Is there something in your life that's bringing you true fulfillment and true purpose? And it can't just be I'm consuming this or that, right? And I guess that's the key about these fake jobs. It's really a form of consumption, right? Because all it does is it funds your lifestyle, which is probably also based on consumption.
Right.
And you're looking for fulfillment in these fake places. It's a fake problem, is what it is, right?
No, and I
Uh, you
think
have a you have a fake job to fund your fake lifestyle, and then that's going to give rise to a million little fake problems that you then have to address.
right, and that ties perfectly into I think episode 3 and even 4 actually, like you said, vetting, maintaining, and fake problems. So you can check those out. Link will be in the description for those. But what I'm actually getting at, and to kind of yes and you, is people that are finding purpose in their job by accident, like the way you described, where you're saying, "Hey, I'm a writer." Let's use you as an example, and I'll steal man. Let's say a person that is not you, but person that finds purpose from their writing job in a different way. So I'm a writer, right?
Yeah.
And I'm going to talk to this person about it because I'm not going to give them some crazy jargon and details about what I do about writing. But there's one aspect of today. Hey, I had to do research on some kind of bees and all this weird stuff I never thought I would be ever learning about. And now I'm going to talk to them about these kind of weird thing. Hey, this bee, did you know bees are all this and that? And like, I don't even know exactly like how they did this and that and blah, blah, blah. Isn't that crazy? And then you start going off that tangent and that leads you somewhere else. I get that. But if it's something where you're literally just dialed in and plugged in and saying, oh, my boss did this, and then Elon Musk tweeted this about that, which related to my boss saying this to me, and then I told my coworker about this, and she totally resonated with what I said, and isn't that crazy? No, that's not crazy. That's something like that. When you say that to somebody, they're thinking, huh. And then why do I need to be involved in that? That's 90% of
Yeah.
people think that. So if you're listening
Yeah.
to this and you're thinking, hey, I struggle with relationships, I can't get a woman, to talk to me. Really introspect and think, how much are you talking about work to a potential prospect of a woman, or even another male as a potential companion? And is that
Yeah.
discussion of work wholehearted, or is it something that I'm just kind of going through the motions because I don't have anything else to talk about? So ask yourself those questions.
Right. Is your work even worth talking about, right? Like that's the thing, is like if the answer to that question is no, you have a fake job, right? Like if your work isn't even worth mention, like it's just something you go do for 8 hours a day, you probably have a fake job, right? And it's never going to be something interesting for you to talk about. I mean, things happen and maybe some drama kicks up and you mention it or whatever, but if that can't be your identity. Like if you have you could have a fake job and make a lot of money. I mean, a lot of these jobs do. I mean, that's probably why it's such a big problem is it funds a very like solid lifestyle, but it's still fake. It's still boring. Nobody cares about it. Nobody wants to hear about it. It's not bringing you fulfillment. It's not going to bring anybody else fulfillment to hear you talk about it. So just because it's like you just because you seem successful, and I mean I'll say you are successful if you're making good money. I mean you're doing well, but that alone cannot be your identity, right? Which is again it all ties into the main thing here, which is your job is not going to ever be your purpose, right?
Right.
So yeah,
And I think,
I get that.
go ahead.
No, I'll let you go.
All right, so I think
You
back
go.
on the purpose thing, I think if your job is, and here's the thing, for fake jobs, it's something like we always at Maneuver say, okay, get your 1, 2, 3 in order. And if, for those of you who don't know what 1, 2, 3 is, it's get your fitness in order, get your career in order, and then get your woman in order. So yeah, obviously that's number 2 is get your career in order. So of course, yeah, get your job, get your fake job, and that's what, let's not bury the lead. Like get your fake job is kind of what we're gonna say, but maneuver around it, right? And obviously, if it's fake job or real job, and they both pay equally, take the real job, of course, right? But the truth and the black pill of this, I guess, or the red pill, is that you're not gonna find that real job. No one is except LeBron, and
Yeah,
and
it's
even
very
that
rare.
arguably, like he's playing a game for fun, happens to be making a shitload of money on it because it's a kind of thing that everyone pays money to watch. So that's even that is a fake job in some small
Yeah,
way. Like that's if you want to go
right.
super purist about this, and we can do that because it's a thought experiment. Bricklaying is kind of one of the only real jobs out there. That's like the first thing that came to my mind. People that lay brick,
Yeah,
that's a real job. And guess what? They're not talking about that to their friends. They drink their beer at the
right.
end. They get their 40-ounce beer at the end of work, and they say, "Oh, let's watch some football." They don't think about their real job. Like people that
Yeah,
have real jobs don't talk about it.
yeah. Exactly. Well, so that's a good point, right? Like, it's funny because so I would say this to anybody watching. If you have a fake job, you probably know, and you're probably miserable about it, right? Like, it's not that fun to go to work for 8 hours and probably slack off for six of them, and then do some bullshit, and then you make money that maybe I've heard people say before they don't even feel like they deserve it, and like that's not a good feeling. That's a pathway to depression and stagnation, pretty quickly. Um, so the key here is the purpose has to be what you're searching for. You need your purpose in your life, and where is that going to come from? It's not going to come from your job. It's going to come from something else. But here's the thing: if you have nothing else going for you, if you're like say you're fairly young and you do have like a decent successful job, but it's making you miserable, you may be happier literally like switching careers and finding a job that's a little more satisfying like and maybe pays less, like for example what you were just saying, like bricklaying or some kind of blue collar work. I could tell you from experience, I didn't enjoy any job as much as I enjoyed being a cable guy for like a year, right? Like I really enjoyed that job.
Right.
It was hard. I was outside in the cold and in the heat. I was, get home every day. I was super tired and didn't really have much energy for stuff, which is a problem, but it's a solvable problem. Even if you have that kind of job. But the point is, like, after getting done with a day of work there, man, there's nothing like seeing a problem in front of you, doing what you need to do to fix it on your own with nobody
Right.
helping you, getting the problem fixed, and then just sitting back and looking at it and be like, yeah, I did that, I fixed it, and there it is, right? And you make it look nice, you make it, efficient, you optimize your process, and every single time you approach an issue, it's new. Like it's a new thing. You apply your principles to it, but it's like a new problem. So it's interesting too. So what I would say to this to that is consider it. Like consider switching your job if you're really miserable in what you're doing and it's not bringing you fulfillment. I would argue that it probably never will. Maybe you are the type of person who needs to go get like a real freaking job. You
Right.
need to go work construction. You need to go do some blue collar hard work with your hands. Or if you don't want to do that, then you need to figure out what you can do for yourself and maybe stop working for other people
Right.
and find a job that or build a business of your own, right?
Hmm.
Maybe you're being called to that, right? And I firmly believe that as a Christian, that we're called to certain things in this world, right? Like you may not understand why or how, but if you have a deep desire to build cabinets for a living, maybe that's what you should be doing, and you don't know how you're going to make money doing that. You don't know how it's going to work. But if that's all you think about, go try it, right?
Right.
And that could apply to anything.
No,
So,
that could apply to anything, and I like where you're going with this. And my next question after this is going to involve like the thing we shouldn't be talking about on YouTube, with the G word, but we'll get into that, and we have to address that because that's omniscient. But to segue a little bit before that, I'm thinking in terms of defining what a fake job is, because we kind of talked about it and stuff, and we're alluding to it, but in reality, it's a very simple concept. It's everyone quietly knew that a fake job existed before 2020. And then we had, the government literally tell us what fake jobs are in form of
yeah,
stamping it saying, hey,
yeah,
you're non-essential, which is doublespeak for if you don't go to work tomorrow, nobody will die. So it's kind of already been defined and laid out. And this is like
yeah,
an obvious example would be like a journalist at, the Huffington Post. That might be a company that's owned by Jeff Bezos or something like that. Maybe that's the Wall Street Journal. But the point is, that's a company that's owned by some other profit-making scheme where you're now no longer going to work as a journalist because it's we've got this kind of this situation going around where we have non-essential work, and nobody's going to die the
right,
next day, right? In fact, an argument can be made that less people would die because you don't have a less likely chance to say something like there's WMDs in Iraq, and that's a whole different
yeah.
conversation. But it's the concept of and am I just working right now because I want to go to work, and if I'm at work, like how much of my work could I get done in 1 hour if I just did it in 1 hour? Like, could I get my job done in 1 hour instead of 8? Like, those are questions you need to ask yourself to decide if you have a fake job or
Right,
not, right? I mean, a lot of people know this
right.
already, but there's been polls that say that almost more than 50% of people don't think they add any value with their job. So, kicking it back over to you,
Yeah.
a fake job, a non-essential job, etc. Like that's one thing, but getting purpose from a fake job, you're gonna have to implement like the G word in part of this, and I'll cover the rest. I think so. Where would you get purpose from
Yeah.
instead of a fake job?
So, absolutely. So, I would implement the G word for sure as the resident Christian of the podcast, right? Like, there's only one thing in this world, in my view, that's ever going to bring you purpose, and that's, the Lord up above. Everything you do in life has to be grounded in something, and that's hopefully that's clear. I mean, I'm not trying to allude to. I'm trying to speak to it, but it's something that's so all encompassing that it's hard to even just go directly at it. Like I'm not trying to dance around anything. I think that your purpose comes from within and it's given to you by God, and it's your job to find out what that is. But if I can tell you this right now, there's like a 95% chance it's not your job, right? There's a very small chance that you're one of these blessed individuals who's going to work and doing some important research or building rockets that's going to send us to space there's a very small chance
Or
that
laying
you're doing
brick?
that. If you are, I'm going to tell you you're very blessed. You're a very, very lucky person, and congratulations. This podcast is not for you because you already have you have two things in one, right? You have the job, which is probably paying you a lot of money, and the purpose from it. But I'm talking mostly to the regular average person, the regular dude, right? Who just wants enough money to like support a family and doesn't necessarily care where that comes from. And you need to be honest about that too. Like, do I really care where that comes from? You probably don't, right? Maybe you think you do, but you don't. You probably went to school to get some degree and you think it's important that you work in that field because you spent this money on the degree and you don't want to waste your investment. I get that, right? But honest to God, like if you really think about it to yourself, does it matter? Like, is that what's important to you? Where you work? No, I
Right.
don't think it is. I think what's important to you is why you're working.
Right.
Again, the purpose that's involved. So you have a calling. You got to identify what that is. And I think the only way you're really going to do that is through the G word, as we
Right.
said.
Right. And again, that might be like controversial, but I think that's going away. I think as we go towards the future, like 5-10 years ago, you say the G word on YouTube and the video gets like turned off immediately. But nowadays, I think it's starting to become more mainstream, and that's kind of more okay, and people are kind of refreshed to hear that. And it'll be a cycle. I'm sure 10-15 years from now, it'll go back to the Sam Harris style of, oh, hey, actually everything is just about game theory optimal outcomes, and there's no evidence for that, and Muslims are bad, etc. So it's like that'll be out of context, whatever. But you see to my point with this. So
Put that. Yeah.
yeah, but back to what you were saying. If you want to think about it like this, without thinking about God and thinking about religion, think about it from my perspective, who is somebody who is non-practicing religion. Call me an atheist. So I get purpose from, family, kids, etc. Like I have a lot of family. I've got brothers and sisters and nieces and stuff and nephews, and I'm married and stuff. So I've got a lot of purpose from that. So I don't need to go to work and say, "Hey, this is really important to me that I, get something very, very productive done today. Otherwise, I will be very depressed." That's what I'm talking about. And that does not mean that I'm not going to show up to work and try my hardest. And I'm not telling you to not show up and try your hardest. In some cases, we'll give you an asterisk and double click on that later. But if you're somebody like me, if you're somebody like Dean, you're going to, even if you're trying not to, you're going to be enthused about your fake job. And what I mean by that is, if you have a job and you're forced to be there for 8 hours, or you're forced to get something done, you're probably going to think, okay, how am I going to do this in a way that's optimal, right? I'm not just going to be like every other NPC at work and say, hey, I'm just going to be told, do what I'm told and just clock out and go home. No, I'm going to still within reason think, okay, if I'm stuck forced to do this, let's do it right. Let's do it the good way. Let's do it the correct way. And that doesn't mean you're now cheating on the whole maneuver lifestyle of, oh, it's a fake job, so don't try. No, it's not what we're saying. That's the red pill answer kind of in some ways, which we discussed last week. That's the burn it down, tear it down, and just check in, check out. It's more give it some effort and give it as much as you can. But remember that at the end of the day, it is just a job. It's not your family. It's not your kids. It's not your actual human connections. And it's not your lifestyle. So if anything, you should be more passionate about fitness. I'm actually more comfortable with you saying, hey, fitness is my purpose and fitness is my hobby. Even though that's already kind of an NPC tier thing to say, that's a lot better than saying, hey, I work at Amazon as a delivery man and that's my purpose in life. And I think I want to talk to everybody about it. Now, even that job is kind of noble because you're bringing stuff to people, but arguably it's a fake job in some ways if you want to be pure about it, because people don't need that stuff. But I understand that it's going to get done. So kind of what I'm saying here is find purpose in other ways. And if you're not religious, don't worry about it. I mean, obviously, if you're not religious, my unironic advice would be go start trying to be religious, like get out there and go to church and get after it. And that's my honest advice.
From the guy who's not religious.
Yeah, from the secular atheist, like go get religion. But if you're super past that and you're saying, no, I'm not going to do that at all, don't worry about it. Just find purpose from, a family, kids, etc. And now you're saying, okay, I don't have a family. Okay, what about your brothers? What about your parents? Okay, they're all gone. Okay, Batman. So now you're in a situation where now you're just trying to argue with me because you don't want to find purpose, and I get that. And for you specifically, call me, shoot me an email, and we'll have a one-on-one conversation about that. But for everybody else, do what I said, and it's going to be better for your purpose outcomes in general, I think.
Yeah, I have a question for you, and this is, I think you mentioned it, but now I'll go ahead and double click on it. If so, let's say you do have one of these fake jobs, right? Is it worth it in your view to try to make something out of it? Like, you go to work and you spend 8 hours there a day, even though you don't think you're really adding any value and you kind of don't like it that much. Is it worth it to, like, say, go to your boss and ask for more responsibility or work extra hours, or like you said, try to get your work done early? And is it worth it to even try doing that kind of thing?
Yeah. So I'll use an example. Like when I was in community college, I worked for a company that would digitize PDF documents, like literally just data entry. And even that job, it was so fake. There was 5 of people that were actually digitizing the documents, and then there another 95% of the company were doing something that was important that wasn't doing the actual digitization of it. So to me, it's like that already had so much bloat of a company, and there was some VC money being spread around to where let's hire as many people as we can and get everybody rich and then get out quick. So that job was fake. I didn't know what a fake job was back then, but I knew that I was in one, and I could tell by this. I said exactly what you said. I thought to myself, hang on a minute, I'm stuck here for 8 hours. It's a fake job. There's a ceiling. Like I can't get a promotion because it's based on some type of nepotistic structure where like you have to be like kind of friends with the boss or whatever to get a promotion. So now I'm just beholden to somebody telling me what to do because it's like I'm barrier of entry. But I'm like, okay, so it's fake job, so I'll show up, do what you said. But to answer your question, I tried putting effort in. I said, hey, is there any way I can kind of get a different keyboard or a different mouse setup? Because I think it'd be more optimal and like kind of more efficient for me to enter this data into a computer. And even that little suggestion alone, when I was already the top performer, I was pumping out the most, digitization documents per day. I was faced with so much like hesitance and pushback on just that little tiny suggestion alone. So you start to realize they don't care about efficiency. They care about let's just not shake the boat. You know what I mean? So it depends on the situation. Right. Like if you're in a job where you do find purpose from, hey, optimizing, that's good. But I think a lot of you out there should just focus on how do I get a better job? That's kind of what it is,
Yeah.
right? And you're not emotionally attached to your coworkers. You're not invested to a point where you're thinking, if I quit my job, like, oh my goodness, everyone is going to be, I'm betraying everybody. Like, you need to get away from that
Yeah.
mindset, especially if you have a fake job. Like, you have to understand that the job is for money. If you could find a better employer that will pay you more, just go jump ship and go there. So that's kind of where what
Yeah.
I would say to that. Depends on the situation, and it depends on how much effort you're willing to put in. But
Yeah, I can add my own like little anecdote there. So my first ever job that I had, well, it wasn't my first. My first big boy job, so to speak, was I worked at a call center, right? And I did quality assurance. So people would call in, and then I would listen to the phone call with the agent, and then basically tell the agent what they did right or wrong. And the whole point of that is to like make sure everybody's doing the right thing and give them the right information and stuff like that. Okay. So this job, and I could say this because this company is long gone, but I basically I defrauded this company for like 18 months, right? Not literally, I didn't steal money or anything like that, but I was like, uh, I clocked in for 10 hours a day at four tens, and I probably did. I swear I did like maybe 30 minutes of work a day, right? And this went on for a year or more, really. I mean, there was times I remember where I would clock in and then go home and then like come back at the end of the day and do my work again in like 30 minutes because that's about how long it took me, and that would be it, and I get paid for a full 10 hours, right? This was a fake job. Okay, now I don't take it to that extreme, because I mean, honestly, I was playing with fire there. The only reason I got away with that is because my supervisor lived in another state, and so she wasn't even there to look over me, and nobody else in the office knew what I even did because I just had a fake job, and so nobody knew what I was even supposed to be doing. So but so the way I would approach this is you have two options, really. If you're in a situation like this, right, you can look at it in two ways. Number one, it's kind of a blessing, right? You're
right,
lucky. Like it's kind of like, okay, I'm not really adding any value here, but I am getting money, and this money's going to go to somebody. This job exists, and it's going to go to someone. So it can be me, sure. Now, I don't recommend that you waste the company's time, like maybe to that extreme. Like I was a kid, I was like a teenager back then. Right, I wouldn't do this today. But uh, you can sort of take what you can get, and then use your extra time that you've been blessed with, that you've been given, and use that as a way to build up your purpose. Because obviously, I mean, as I've said before in this episode, is like the key here is what's driving you. What is your purpose? Why are you doing things? Right. For me, it's God, and everything that comes after that. For you, it's like family. Everything comes after that. But the key is that it's not whatever the work is, right? Like my work is simply a way to make money, and then I'm going to use that to fulfill myself in other ways,
right.
to the degree that I can, right? So you can look at it that way and just sort of take the check, and then use your time to build your hobbies, to maybe build a business of your own, to work on your relationships, anything that you can think of that's going to really bring you fulfillment. So you can do that. Or number two is the option that I asked you, right? Which is like, well, let me try to turn this into a real job. Let's
Right.
say I don't really have much going on in my house. Let's say like I don't really have any burning passions that I really want to pursue, and I'm here for 10 hours a day, so let me figure out something. And that's also a legitimate option. Now you brought up that your story is great because yeah, it may be that the not even that the job is fake, but like the whole operation is fake, right? I think that's very possible. And so in those situations, you're not really gonna get very far doing that. And in that case, I would go back to the first answer I just gave you,
Right.
right? Is like you got to figure out how to just take the money and then use your free time to do something else or find another job.
Yeah, and I'll
But
give blanket. Go ahead.
well, I was just going to say so, but obviously the key of both of those options, whatever you're doing, is you got to understand you're pursuing the legitimate purpose. That's what you're after. Listen, and that's the key of every maneuver conversation we're going to have is like we're after what's really going to fulfill you in this world. We say don't sleep around because that's not going to bring you fulfillment. You should try to be a good man and find a wife. Don't work. Don't be happy with your fake job just because you're making a lot of money and that you think you're doing great and that's going to bring you purpose. No, it isn't. You need to find a deeper purpose in this life
Right.
that's going to really drive you and fulfill you. And that needs whatever choice you make, that needs to be the grounding principle in my view.
Right. And we're not saying be edgy and hate all your coworkers and burn it all down. And an example, like if we have a viewer that's, hey, I work at the DEI hire department in and Google. Let's say that your job is to look at resumes and say, hey, this person is, this person's brown, this person's white, this person's black, this person's a man, this person's a woman, and categorize all that stuff and think, hey, how are we going to figure out a way to get this? If that's your job, you already know. I mean, well, hopefully you know this, but that's a fake job. That doesn't really. You're actually taking value away from your company potentially because you're not prioritize. You're stopping them from prioritizing merit over immutable characteristics, which we talked about last episode. But if that's your job, we're not telling you to, hey, go quit your job and, hey, you need to get a better job and everything. Get as much value, get as much money out of that job as you can, and understand that that's great. But as soon as it's 5 p.m., you're no longer Gary, the DEI guy at Google. You are Gary, the guy who's date Gary, or he's party Gary, or whatever, or hopefully you're Jim Gary. But you're locked in and dialed in, and now you're thinking, okay, so now I've got my 8 hours done of DEI, mechanics. What do I do to kind of get purpose? Because if you're telling me that your purpose in life is to give jobs and find jobs for people that are of minority statuses and whatever, okay, I can see that you're trying to be good faith, and I can see that you're actually trying to be a good person. I get that, but that shouldn't really be your purpose if it's your job. And maybe that's wrong. Maybe some people out there are actually in that DEI position and they think that their job does add them a lot of purpose because they have this sense of, hey, I'm actually providing some people with opportunities they wouldn't otherwise have. But in reality, what you're doing is you're taking away opportunities from people that would have had them if you weren't there. So you're doing a zero-sum game is what I like to call it. So you're not actually adding any value. You're not adding any productivity to anybody's life. For every one person you're hiring, you're not hiring somebody else that maybe would have had the job. So think about it like that. But that's a really weird example. But my point is, focus on, we're not telling you, hey, go be edgy and quit your job and burn it all down and go to your coworkers and say, I don't want to be friends with any of you guys. No. Operate mechanically with a maneuver lifestyle. Go to work and try your best at your job and do your best while you're there and stuff. But if you are in a situation where your job is so miserable, where you're thinking, okay, I need to find a better job, then yes, now we're talking about the blanket statement of go to a trade school, go to start an electrician apprenticeship program like that. There's stuff out there that's hands-on real job stuff that will set you up to be paid a lot. And why I like offering those as solutions is because it's a 5-year horizon where you're looking at 5-10 years from now, you're owning your own company. If you're doing things right, you're your own electrician. And the whole goal in my mind, the ultimate end game, they say Linux is like the entry level as you Ubuntu, and you get down that rabbit hole and you start saying, okay, the end game of Linux is Gen 2 and you get all that. Some of you guys that understand that reference, awesome, leave a comment. But what I'm saying is the end game of this whole situation is self-sustainable lifestyle. So if you're beholden to a company that, makes you get the COVID vax or makes you, they're going to do, if they can get you to do something like that, they're just going to keep pushing it further, right? So eventually there's going to be some line that the company that you work for is going to cross where you're going to say, no, I can't do that. And then boom, you're done. You're out of income. Like you're kind of messed, you're in a messed up situation. So ultimate end game Gen 2 goal is, and I'll explain that later, but ultimate goal is be self-sustainable, have your big freezer, have your diesel generator, have everything, but also have your own income stream. And we'll talk about how to get involved in that as well. But no, to sum up, what I'm saying here is don't burn it all down. Focus on small incremental change, and then eventually you'll get in that position. And if you're asking from zero, get an apprenticeship for an electrician or do one of those programs, because those are actually value added jobs in society, and it'll set you up to have your own self-sustainable career. So yeah.
And they are genuinely fulfilling in their own right. It feels good to do. I mean, the funny thing is a lot of blue collar guys they just do nothing but complain about their job, right? But that's because it's hard. It's hard work. And a lot of blue collar people too got into it because they didn't see any other option, right? Like if you're already in a professional position, you're working some white collar job, you're sort of choosing the blue collar route. You're not going to have that mental load of I'm stuck here forever and I don't want to do this. You're not going to have that because you chose to go there. So they're dealing with that. They're dealing with the feeling that they're stuck in it and they have no choice. So that's why they complain all the time. And again, I'm saying this as somebody who has been in the field, and I chose to go there. I chose to go do that. So I never felt that way ever. Actually, right. I loved it. I looked forward to going to it because I'm like, yeah, this is great. We're outside. I feel like a kid. I feel like a kid around a bunch of grumpy adults is how I felt. Right. I'm doing the same job they are. But I look forward to it. I'm like, yeah, I like it. It's hot. We're sweaty, but man, look how clean I made this cable, right? Look how nice that looks. Isn't that fun? I don't know. I liked it. I really liked it. I feel and you might get that out of it too.
Right.
Okay, so I want to transition into something a little bit broader. So I think hopefully you have an understanding of the point we're trying to make here, which is that your job is really not going to bring you purpose. Well, most of the time, for the vast majority of us, it's not going to bring you purpose.
Right.
So make sure you're hammering that first. Like, what is going to fulfill me? And I'm going to chase that first and foremost. And the job is like a tool to facilitate that, right? So now to zoom out a little bit, make it a little broader, where do you think these fake jobs come from? Why do we live in a world with fake jobs? What's going on with that? Let me ask you that.
Yeah, no, and I think it's that is the question, right? So where do the jobs come from, right? It's something where, in my opinion, if you, I'm a bottom down person. Like I like to start from the bottom and go up for as far as conceptualizing ideas. And I know for you, it's you're more of a top down and kind of figure out here's the general idea and then kind of work my way down to the details. So for me, I'm always thinking, okay, where does it all start? Where it all starts to me is where does money come from, right? So if you go from that angle, just as a side, like ask 10 people that question on the street, and only one of them might give you a coherent answer of where it actually comes from. And we're not going to discuss like that in this video. It's way out of scope for this, and it's way too complicated. But basically, yeah, where does money come from, and then how does it go from there? So the money comes from a place, and then it gets put into the economy, and it starts circulating. Okay, so if there's money in the economy that circulates, it of course sort of devalues the money that you already have. So let's say you work a job as a blue collar guy, and you're saying, "Hey, I'm going to save up. I want to save up a couple $1,000s and buy myself like, you know, I want to buy myself like a nice studio setup with like speakers and a TV. Like that's my big goal is this year I'm going to save up a couple $1,000 and buy a big screen TV and some speakers. Okay, so if you're just saving for 1 year, you're probably not going to see what I'm talking about. Whereas like, at the end of the year, that $1,000 that you saved is worth is roughly worth $1,000, right? But if you're saying something like where, hey, I'm going to put a couple thousand away for my kid to use for college 20 years from now. Now you're talking about a situation where I am talking to you and where I am saying money that's put into circulation every year through, deficit spending, through government packages, whatever, what have you. That $20,000 that you said, hey, I'm putting this aside right now. This is how much it costs to go to school, like for 4 years. I'm gonna put that aside for my kid to go there because I want him to go there. That $20,000 in 20 years is not going to be worth enough to pay for your kid's school. Like it's just not going to be doing that because the money in the circulation is devaluing your money that you have. So prescriptions for that will come in a different episode because that's kind of a financial advice situation. But implementing the reason that's important for context on why this is happening. So where do the fake jobs come from? The fake jobs come from this. How do people spend money? Like how are people going to buy our fake products? Okay, we have to create jobs so that people can get paid to buy fake products, right? So that's how it all, in my mind, that's where it all kind of comes down from is the bottom up. And it's something like almost like an inflation of both lifestyle and currency. And lifestyle inflation is something I'm going to ask you about. How do you avoid that and stuff? But that segues back into kind of part one of the show. So that's my bottom up explanation of it. What about you from a top down like level? What would you say?
Yeah, perfect. Yeah. So I'll approach, yeah, from the big picture perspective, the way I see it is this, right? I think most aspects of our society are broken. I mean, it's kind of the key aspect. The whole reason we started this podcast and then our website and everything is that most of what we do is like upside down and backwards, and I mean like totally wrong, right? We've done episodes about dating, we've done episodes about like fitness advice, nutrition. We've done episodes about now we're talking about jobs and careers, and there's a theme here, right? Everything is broken. It's all topsy turvy, right? And now, in my view, I'll just get it out there. This is the work of the devil, right? Satan is involved here because he wants to drive us. He wants to make us weak, right? When you're weak, that's when Satan is has access to you, right? Um, Now, God also has access to you in those instances, which is why you need to turn to Him and not the devil. But what does the devil look like in this situation, right? He wants to break your will and drive you into despair. And now despair is a lot closer than you think it is, right? Despair is something deeper than depression. First of all, I don't even when I say depression, I'm not talking about this clinical my brain is, off balance or whatever the words they use these days. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about I had a bad day and I have a very low mood, right? That's what I mean by depression, okay? I'm not talking about the clinical definition. Now, despair is a level even below that. Despair is a level of nothing I do is ever good enough. I'm never going to fix this problem. This thing keeps cropping up in my life, and I just don't know what to do. Or if I do know what to do, I'm just not doing it, and I don't know why. I can't do it. That's despair. Despair is a loss of hope, okay? Which is exactly where the devil wants you. So, why does this relate to the fake jobs? Because, as Tony was just saying, he gave the bottom up explanation. We have this system that's set up to inflate you with bullshit, right? If you've ever seen Fight Club, really breaks this down, right? Tyler Durden breaks this down really good, right? You have you have a job you don't like, to buy stuff you don't need, to attract people you don't like, right? To bring you fulfillment that is empty, that doesn't even exist, right?
Perfectly said.
This is all tying up into bringing you lower, to driving you to despair, because you're going to do all these things. You're going to go out in the world, you're going to do all these things, and you're going to be like, this isn't working. I don't feel good. I have everything I'm supposed to have. I have the wife, I have the car, I have the house, I have the job, I have the money, but I don't feel good. Why is it? Oh, it must just be because I have depression. It must just be because my chemicals are unbalanced.
Right.
So I got to go to a therapist now, and that's extra money too to the therapist. Now I got to take this pill, and that's going to solve my problems. Oh, but the pill didn't actually solve my problems. I guess I'll just uh, do that thing,
Yeah.
where you
Yeah.
you call it
Unalive.
quits. Yeah, exactly. So hopefully, I broke this down for you and I didn't even use, you see, that's the way my mind works. I'm not even using any specifics. I'm just saying, like, it's all broken, but it's broken on purpose. And now, just, I'll get a little in depth here on the theological, but I'm not going to go that far into it.
Right.
So not you, Tony, but nobody get scared of this. Okay. I just want to say that, the reason I see it this way is I think that the way evil tends to work on this world is primarily through urges that are given to individuals. Okay, it's not like I don't believe that there is a person or even a group of people who's like directly in communication with the devil, and he's giving them instructions as they sit around some scary looking oak table, in the dark. I don't believe that. That's not how this works. The way it works is that every single one of us is subject to these little urges. And I may have the urge to go out or not go anywhere, but get on my phone and order DoorDash. The low key, that's an evil urge. And you have to understand what I'm saying, right? It's not evil in the sense of like, I'm going to go murder somebody. It's not evil like that. But what are you really doing? You're hiring somebody to be a private taxi for your burrito, right? Which is completely wasteful. It's absolutely wasteful and lazy on your part. There is no reason for you to do that. Even if you got in a car and went and bought the burrito, even that could be argued to be a little wasteful, because you could have just made that burrito yourself. But see how it's like a tier lower, right?
Right.
But hopefully you can understand, it illustrates the way our society is moving. We started off where everybody had to just cook their own meals. Oh, actually, even go further than that. We started off where you had to go hunt. You had to go hunt an animal or grow crops and
Right.
then eat that, right? And then you had to cook it, right? And then now we moved on to this place where we have something called a restaurant, where you go and somebody will cook for you, and you pay them and they cook for you. And that's slightly more wasteful than going and hunting on your own, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then now we have this situation where you have a private taxi just for your burrito, which is even more wasteful than what came before. And I promise you there will be something more wasteful that comes again in the future. And you see how we're getting further and further and further from the ultimate not wasteful thing, which is to go do something yourself.
Right.
And I guarantee you that our ancestors didn't feel despair. They felt like, I'm hungry, I need to go deal with this problem. That's what
Well,
they
definitely.
felt,
They didn't
right?
have Prozac in the Roman era, so it's like there's a reason
Exactly.
for that, right? They didn't need it.
Yeah.
They had their own problems,
didn't
but
need
they
it.
didn't have the fake job problem that we have today.
Right, because again, it's not exactly, they had problems, and that's the thing. They had serious problems, not fake ones. They had serious ones.
Yeah.
I need to eat. I need to eat, and there's nobody that's going to DoorDash me a Chipotle burrito, so I need to go hunt a freaking cantaloupe or something.
Right.
Not cantaloupe.
But as society
You need to go hunt
advances,
an animal, right?
you get this bloat of where, okay, now these fake problems will come up, and you can even use because you were bringing up examples of, okay, how do I go to the next level of ridiculousness? Yeah, you didn't even go as far as to say, oh, well, actually, that's a good point. There's hunting and gathering was a thing back then. But
Yeah.
if you even compare the Romans to the cavemen, if they could speak English, would laugh at them because they had their
Right.
own versions of fake problems, in the form of
Yeah,
which
you have
jewelry is the
you
best.
have running water, you have aqueducts.
Yeah.
Wow, you guys are soft.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So we're not saying technology is bad. We're saying understand that it comes with problems and it comes with bloatware in the form of real life of like having fake problems. And I think it's
Right.
funny when you mentioned that you laid out that imagery of the oak table, and the devil saying, in a secret way, you're all sitting here right now, and I'm going to give you some evil instructions on how to ruin the world. And you said you don't think that's real. But me as an atheist does think that's real in the form of Jekyll Island. That's the first thing I thought of was how did the Federal Reserve become put in place? And it actually kind of was that oak table in that dark room on that island off the coast of Georgia. Like it did happen. You know what I mean? So as it details up, I'm thinking
Yeah.
you're describing kind of. So it's interesting to get a little difference of opinion there. But I think did I interrupt what you were saying or were you finished?
No, I was done, but I will respond to what you just said though,
Okay.
because I think that's interesting.
Okay.
So I wanted to illustrate how evil works, sort of like on a mass scale.
Yeah.
But I do believe, for the Christians watching, I do believe that it's possible to choose to open yourself to evil and choose to intentionally be evil, right? And you'll see, for example, like we're kind of really off topic, so I'll make this brief. But you'll see, for example, like there's people in this world who call themselves Satanists, right? Now, if you talk to a Satanist, they're doing it like ironically, right? If you talk to a Satanist, they're gonna say it's like a joke, right? Like, oh, obviously it's all fake, and I just think this is funny, right? And I'm just sort of trolling Christians, and that's why I'm doing it. Okay, that's that's what makes it so evil is that the people doing it don't even know they're doing it,
Yeah.
right? So the people on Jekyll Island that you mentioned, right? They don't even know that what they're doing is as evil as it is. They're doing it in some warped perspective. They're doing like ironically or because they genuinely think it's for the greater good. Now, in those situations, I do think that they're much closer to like the oak table that I'm talking about.
Right.
But it doesn't look like an oak table because they, like I said, they themselves don't see it that way. And that's why it has to be that way because nobody who's sane and capable would actually commune with the devil, right? You have to be thinking that you're doing something else in order to go that far with it. So anyway,
No,
that's my
and I
thinking.
like that, and I want to give you an example of what I think a fake problem is that people might not think of. One is like a supply chain issue, something that people think, oh, that's a big problem, that's a normal problem, that's a real problem, that's a real issue, right? Supply chain issue is a big deal. But for me, if you kind of I mean, you already know where I'm going to go with this. I can tell by the way you're smiling, but just hear me out and entertain this. Um,
I got you.
Here's the thing: if you have a situation where you're now allowing yourself to be beholden to something as a supply chain issue, think about what you've done to yourself to allow that. Okay, now our country obviously imports goods and services from other countries, right? So let's say they import a certain amount of plastic or a certain amount of steel from China, and that's how they bring it here, and they maybe use that steel to kind of assemble or build some kind of product. If you have some supply chain issue, like let's say China ceases to exist or something, like let's just use an extreme example. Let's say they just cease to exist. Let's just boom. Then oh, my supply chain is now having problems. So now I can't build any steel or plastic goods. We don't have that option available to us, guys. Sorry about that. Our supply chain issue is gone. Or it's there. We're not going to be able to have no. So my point obviously is this: if you open the door to allowing yourself to be beholden to something like that, you're going to, of course, have a fake problem arise in the form of a supply chain issue. Whereas instead of doing that, if you had just said, "Hey, let's go dial it back and ask the question: why did we start offsetting all of the production of plastic and steel to China?" Okay, we did that because it's cheaper to get it done there, right? It's not that we can't do it here. It's just that the labor in China is cheaper than the labor here. Okay, let's go back from there because now I'm doing the Dean strategy of go up down, top bottom. So let's go back from there. Why is the labor cheaper in China than the labor here? Oh, that's because we, for whatever reason, and we talked about this a little bit last week. For whatever reason, we think that if you work here, you deserve $15 an hour. You deserve healthcare. You deserve all this stuff. But if you work in China, which is arbitrarily located in a different location on the earth, you're not beholden to that same morality, that same ethics. You don't deserve that. You live in China. You were born in a different country. You don't deserve $15 an hour. Kidding me? Totally fine. So that's kind of if you go that far back, you'll see immediately to me that's a contradiction. So it's a little bit ridiculous to say oh, because you're not born in this specific landmass, and you can even go closer to home, and you can say Mexico or Canada, because you're born in Tijuana instead of you know Los Angeles, which is kind of the same thing, and nowadays, functionally speaking. But if we get into that later, if you're
Yeah.
now you deserve unalienable rights unless you were born in a different place. Oh no! So what is an unalienable
Right.
right if it doesn't apply to you if you're born in some other country?
If there's people who have been alienated from it, yeah.
Yeah. So that's my whole point. It's
Yeah.
like, okay, so we're now going to impose our morality. We're going to impose our hegemony on other countries because we're the best country in the world. We need to police everybody. We need to spread democracy to the Middle East. Like, but you know what we're not going to do? We're not going to enforce the labor laws that we've enforced on ourselves to others. And in fact, we're gonna make it worse by incentivizing those
Right.
countries to send us all these goods and services by operating a trade deficit with those countries and say, come on in, give me all your goods and services, and here take all of our USD and pay all your workers 40 cents an hour and put up these nets on your buildings so that your workers don't unalive themselves. So
Yeah,
so
dump
it's
out, yeah.
I just
Yeah.
listed 9 or 10 different like call stack issues of fake problems just because one little but I feel bad if I don't pay my guys 15 an hour. We don't have healthcare and stuff, so yeah, gotta offset it. Gotta buy the skateboard from China. Can't build it here. So talk to me about
Right.
what that real world example is and what that means to you and how you would go about solving that. And then if you can contextualize that in an example that somebody else might have in their actual life, not like a small scale version of it.
Yeah. So that's a great illustration of the maybe the primary driver of most of our fake problems is this misplaced sense of we can fix things that are not really fixable. Okay. So in my view, that's sort of the liberal ideology in a nutshell, is that if we just pass the right laws, the right set of laws, our society will be perfect. That is the liberal project. I mean, if you go through history, you have two sides, and they call themselves something else every time. But you have conservatives who say, in my view, are more accurate. They say, we kind of got this far doing it this way. Let's just keep doing it. We don't really need to make huge changes. Like, yeah, okay, there's some certain things that are unfair, but we can't always just fix every problem. So we kind of just got to deal with it as it comes up. And then you have liberals who are like, no, this is all wrong. It's all unjust. There's injustice, and we have to fix the injustice by passing laws. We need more laws. We need just the right amount of laws. And this, okay, that law's wrong. We'll fix it and put this one in. And then we got this one, and then we got 10 more laws to enforce that law. And it's just a million laws. Just keep adding more and more and more and regulations and laws because you want to fix every little problem. Oh, this company did this bad thing. Well, instead of just executing the CEO, what we'll do is we'll pass a law. We'll just pass a law, and then nobody will ever do anything wrong ever again after that. We'll just fix it.
I think Luigi Mangione
CEO,
thinks otherwise.
yeah, we'll go to the CEO and we'll say, "Hey, thanks for finding this problem for us. Here's $10 million." That's I don't know. That's a
Right.
stupid example, but just that's the liberal mindset, right? Is let's just fix everything, right? You cannot fix everything. You just mentioned great example. People in the United States expect a certain wage for their labor. Right?
Mm-hmm.
That's just how we are. And actually, if we were left to our own devices, even the employers are okay with that. Even the employers are like, yeah, I don't want to rip you off. Hey, I know you. I see you every day. I'm not trying to get one over on you. Yeah, like I want to pay you a fair amount for the work you do. I appreciate it. You're helping me. I'm helping you. We're building something together. That's how we are in the United States. That's how we are. As you pointed out, when we move it across the pond, we move to China. I don't see freaking whatever Chinese dude every single day. I don't see him. I don't care about him. I don't know his family. I don't know anything about him. I don't live near him. His life does not affect mine whatsoever. So if I'm paying him 40 cents an hour to work a extremely stressful factory job and I never have to see him, it's just more money in my pocket, right? This is also human nature. It's nothing to do with any race of people. It's just human nature.
Right.
If you're out of my mind, I don't care about you. How could I? I don't even know you. How could I even give a crap about you whatsoever? So I'm happy to just pay you less and pocket the money. Now, as a conservative, I see this as a problem. Liberals would also see this as a problem if they're being honest. Would see this as a problem. Now, as a conservative, what do I do about that? because I don't want that happening. It's not necessarily because I care so much about the Chinese person, although I do. I mean, I don't want anybody to be working to death. I mean, that's awful. I don't want that. But it's not necessarily because I care about them. It's because I see that this is okay. That's a job that could have been going to my neighbor or me. Could have been going to somebody I care about, and somebody in my immediate community could have been making a decent wage doing that job. But now that job is gone. So as a conservative, that's a problem for me. I need to know what are we going to do about that. So my solution to this is our economy, and I'm speaking specifically about the United States, but I think this is true for every country. We need to be self-sufficient as much as we possibly can. Now, in the United States, I happen to believe one of the reasons I think the United States is the greatest country to ever exist is because we have the best position on the map, right? If you're playing Civilization and we spawned in on this particular area of the map, I'd be like, great, nice, easy game, right? We have everything we need right here. We have two giant oceans, impossible to invade this country without us knowing about it like hours in advance, right? We have friendly neighbors, for the most part. We have every natural resource you can want. We have a fantastic labor force filled with good people for the most part. We have everything you need here to be fully self-sufficient. There is no reason we should have a trade deficit with China for raw materials like steel and plastic. That's
Right.
crazy.
Right.
There's no reason for that to be the case. We can do that here.
Right.
So we should be doing it here, and we need to do what we need to do to make that happen. Now, it's going to be tough in the interim because we're relying on China for these materials, so we got to sort of ramp up our own production. But the only way we're going to get our companies to ramp up that production is by cutting off the faucet, right? And that's going to be like ripping off the Band-Aid right there. There's going to be some turmoil, but in my view, it needs to be done.
And I love that you ended that statement with ripping off the Band-Aid, because that's kind of the end of what I'm about to say involves that exact analogy. Because I'm going to talk to you kind of using what you were saying, and like the liberal solution and the conservative solution, like they both agree that this is a problem, right? We both agree.
Yeah.
But there's different ways of dealing with it. And I think a lot of people, and I even went through this myself, so this is why I specifically can kind of talk about this, is almost like a 5-stage of grief situation with relation to this exact problem. It's like you almost have like a 5-stage of how do I fix this problem going on in your head. And
Yeah.
I'm going to use like sort of like autistic programming kind of example, like titles to example these, but you can put these in with whatever you think, right? So I would say like the Windows 11 solution is like, that, and that is like the entry level. Like I'm just using Windows 11 because it's on whatever machine I'm using, so I'm not worried about this, right?
Yeah.
That is keep doing what we're doing, right? That's just the status quo. Keep it going. No big deal. I'm getting my paycheck. You're getting yours. Gary's getting Gary's. Hu Xiao's getting Hu Xiao's. Maybe it's $4 an hour, but it's whatever. You know what I mean? Chun Long is getting $4.50, whatever. So we're fine. Windows 11. The Mac solution, maybe you're a little, okay, I'm up to the Mac level, so I know a little bit more. That's Unix compliant, it's POSIX compliant, but still, that's what I would say, like the liberal solution. This is where I'm going with this. Is kind of what you said. It's like, okay, we should fix this, but we need to keep paying those guys because they depend on it, right? And so when I hear somebody say this, I think they're almost based, they're getting there, but they need a little bit of work. And why I bring that up is because I've had people tell me, oh, it's terrible that, you have like that we're buying iPhones, and that supports this culture of, child labor. Like you're supporting child labor when you buy an iPhone. And then I've had somebody like the Unix Mac guy tell me, well, hey, those guys are actually, they're getting paid that money, and they have that job because it's the best thing they can get. So they're basically trying to frame it to where you're actually doing them a favor by buying that iPhone, because you're giving them a potential job they wouldn't have. They would otherwise be on some farm and having some less quality of life, right? So that's their kind of cope, right? That's level 2. And I like to say I had that for a couple of years and then evolved into the Linux System D solution. Kind of, you get past that and kind of install your own operating system and go from there. And this was like kind of level 3, which was, okay, we actually don't need to fix that problem because, but we should still pay for it because the free market will run things, right? And that was, again, that's not fully evolved. That's level 3, but that's entry level Linux tier. You go to work and say, well, you're using a Windows machine. I use Linux. Okay. So I'm not going to flex on you, but I use Linux. It's actually its own free open software solution. And what that means is I think the free market will dictate everything. Right. So that's, again, you're cooking, but you're not cooked. So I think when you get to that base Gen 2 OpenRC style, you're not going to understand this lingo at all because that's how good of a solution it is. Solution. This is
Right.
this is
I'm lost, bro. Yeah,
exactly.
you lost me after Windows 11, dude. What
It's
is a
it's
Mac? You
it's
know, I
like
don't
it's
even.
like one of those memes where
Yeah,
the brain keeps expanding, but you don't
yeah.
understand the
The
lingo at the bottom.
iceberg.
We're down at the
Yeah,
bottom here, guys, and that's that.
yeah,
Like, it's not even a brain; it's a cat or something from the universe,
yeah.
100 trillion years away from now, that are immune to the 2030 2036 Y236 bug that we'll get into next week. But
Right,
anyway,
right.
that solution is we do need to fix the problem, but we're going to do it by not paying them anymore. Okay, we're going to withdraw consent to the Chinese market. We're going to withdraw consent to the iPhone market, and what that's going to do, yeah, to the Unix Mac guy who was saying, hey, but they depend on that money. Well, hey, guess what? It's the nanny state issue, and it all circles back to you're just contributing more to it, and it's going to make it worse in the long run. Whereas you, and this is why I liked what you said at the end, because I kind of was thinking this is how I'll end my next kind of paragraph, if you will, is that you said rip the band-aid off early. I think the Gen 2 OpenRC solution is, yeah, stop paying them. We don't need that crap. And that will rip the band-aid off early too, because they're not
Yep.
they're not going to be depending on something anymore because they're not going to have it. So they're going to have to find ways to adapt, which they were doing before we offset the labor to them to
Right.
begin with. They were perfectly fine on that farm.
Exactly.
They were happy. They were Farmer Joe equivalent. Like we don't need to have these fake problems. Like rip the band-aid off and let them go back to what they were doing.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. So that's a perfect way to phrase it. Like, if you think about it like this, a conservative position, and I hate, almost sometimes I even hate using conservative liberal. I almost hate doing that, but it's shorthand for what we're talking about. Like,
Right.
I don't want you guys to think that I'm beholden to some political party or some political ideology, because I'm not. Like, conservatism in the United States comes with so much baggage that I don't personally identify with. I don't like it, all right? But it's shorthand for what I'm trying to get across. So hopefully you understand that. But when I say like the conservative solution, maybe that's not even accurate. There's probably a lot of conservatives that would call themselves conservatives in the United States that don't agree with what I'm about to say. But in my view, it is conservative because I'm trying to conserve something, right? I'm trying to conserve the incentive and the ability of people to take care of themselves. That's what I'm trying to conserve. So, as Tony said, if we're not sending money to China for fake iPhones, right? We don't. They're going to have to figure out some other way to take care of themselves. That's actually helpful to them. So it's the difference between your mother and your father, right? There's a reason why the Democrats, women love voting for Democrats and men love voting for Republicans. There's a reason for this, okay? Because generally, although they are a uniparty and there's really not that big of a difference between them, but in general, the conservative ideology is more masculine and the liberal ideology is more feminine. The instinct, the spirit of those two movements are masculine and feminine. The conservative movement is like your dad when you're afraid to ride your bike down the hill. Okay, he says, you know how to ride your bike, you're going to be fine. Even if you fall, you're going to be fine. Yeah, you might get a scrape or two. All right, it's not going to be fun if you fall, but I know you can do it, so just freaking do it. In fact, he might even push you to just force you to do it, Whereas your mom is going to see that you're scared and she's not going to want you to hurt yourself. She's, well, please be careful. I don't know if you're ready for that yet. Maybe we could just wait a little longer. Wait, put the training wheels back on. Do you have your helmet strapped in? That's your mom, okay? And she's being your mom, and that's great. But you need your dad sometimes. You need your dad to just push you down the damn hill so that you can see what you're capable of. Okay, and that's a more conservative viewpoint. And I think it's important to understand that it is helpful. It's a good thing. When your dad does that for you, that's great. That is really good, and you need that in your life. What we don't want is the government as a nanny, as the nanny state, right? We don't want the government coddling people. We don't want the government taking care of people because that's what makes them weak. That's what makes them useless and impotent.
Right.
We want the government to be out of the way, to be enforcing laws. If we've agreed on laws together as a society, then they need to be enforced. So the government needs to do that. But we don't want them interrupting stuff, saying you have to do things a certain way or that way or this way because, well, it'll just make them feel bad if you don't.
Right.
We don't want them doing that.
And this is what the conservatives get wrong about China. So that'll be something we can kind of maybe put into context for some of you guys. So it's like you said, the nanny state, the security state. Again, like when you first break into politics, like maybe you start to think that's a good thing, right? You're thinking, hey, let's take care of some of these folks that need the help, right? and let's do that. And like we need to help others and etc. But and you start to realize it very quickly that just like you said, if you can't ride that bike and you're going to be coddled with training wheels your whole life, you're never going to be able to take them off, and you're not going to have any impetus to take them
Right.
off because nobody's pushing you to do it. But you can't inject into somebody's like brain like the understanding and knowing that it just feels a lot better and secure to ride the bike without training wheels. Like you're not going to be able to inject that in their life if they've never done it. So
Right.
they need you need somebody in your life, and in this case you need somebody out of your life in the form of government to not facilitate the nanny state and the security state. So it's something that is
Yeah.
very very much tied into like the fake economy and the fake jobs, and it's something that explains a lot because there even are fake jobs that are reviewing footage from the Patriot Act. That's a job somebody had to do. And
Wow.
I know this is a talking point that people say, but you can count the number of terrorist attacks that were prevented by the Patriot Act on one hand. Um, I know a lot of people say it's zero. I would like to believe it's more than zero, but I firmly agree that it might be less than five. And the amount of
Yeah.
damage that the Patriot Act did, and the amount of you might not see it in the form of I'm doing nothing wrong, so it's okay if the government just checks on my messages here and there or has a free wiretap to my phone here and there. Like that's not a big issue for me. But it's not just that. What's happening there is they have this new system where they need to employ, with taxpayer money, people to overview and kind of analyze your data and analyze like your videos and stuff. So it's it's way more than just my privacy. Like I'm okay with being not private. Like that's step one, and then
Right.
that's a more philosophical like part of it. But it really comes down to way more than just that. You're creating technical debt. You're creating bloatware in the form of the government, in the form of jobs and stuff, and that kind of circles back to what I was saying, where the money gets printed up, and then now, 10 years later, your $20,000 is worth nothing because you didn't inject it into the Bitcoin wallet that you wanted to, or whatever. So
Right.
that's just kind of
Right.
where I'm going with this, and the maneuver prescription to all this. Well, we've kind of been alluding to it already. This whole episode is that find a way to make yourself eventually that kind of Mark Rippetoe self-sufficient style, but on a small incremental changes kind of way. So if I'm somebody like
Yeah.
I'm 21 years old and I'm saying, hey, Dean, what do I do here? I have a fake job. Like, I don't really have any purpose from it. And like you guys said, I'm focusing on fitness and career. Fitness is in order. I've been doing your lock-in thing. I've been, counting my calories. I'm feeling pretty good about that. I'm in a comfortable position fitness-wise, and that's already kind of on autopilot. But my career is kind of not on autopilot yet. I'm trying to figure out, like, do I quit this job? What do I do? So what's your big blanket if you had to give it up for 1,000 people, hey, here's the blanket advice, and apply that to this specific guy that I'm kind of telling you, 21 years old, and his fitness is already in order.
Yeah. So I'd say, you're going in the right order. You need to take care of yourself first and foremost. You need to be healthy and capable of remaining productive. Um, you're not happy with your career because the career is not really supposed to make you happy. Okay. So stop looking to that as your primary avenue of fulfillment. Okay. If you have some burning passion that you want to pursue, then just do it. Especially if you're in your 20s. All right. It does not matter if you're broke in your 20s. Nobody cares. It's not relevant. I mean, if you're really worried about I can't get women because I'm broke in my 20s, that's not true. First of all, it's not true. But secondly, that's you don't really need to focus on that. All right, I'm not saying to be lonely on purpose, although maybe I am saying that. You could try it. I mean, it's probably a good thing, but you don't have to do that necessarily. But I would say this: if you have a burning passion, then pursue it. You're not going to have any better time to do it than then. Okay, but be serious about it. Like if you're really going to do it, then do it, and make it your life, and or make it your purpose. And that's what you're going to find purpose in. But I think more likely, if you don't have one of those burning passions, you need to just recontextualize. Just kind of zoom out, take a break from, in your mind at least for a minute. Just think about what you're doing. Okay, is your job so horrible that you just hate even the thought of going there? Okay, maybe you need a new job, right? Is it livable? Can you accept it? Like, okay, I don't love my job, but it's not really that bad, and I don't really hate it, necessarily. It's just a job. Okay, then that's what it is. It's just a job. You just go there to make money, and you're going to look elsewhere for purpose. You're going to look to your relationships. You're going to look towards your hobbies. You're going to look towards whatever it is you're trying to build in your life, and that's where your happiness is going to come from. So it's a fake. It's in my view a bit of a fake problem to be like, I'm just so miserable in my career. I think you're just expecting more from that than it's ever really going to be able to give you. So
Right.
don't look to it for that. Take from it what is really there, which is just some money, way to sustain yourself, maybe a ladder to sort of climb up if you're interested in doing that. But it's not really much more, and it never will be. And so stop expecting that. You know?
Right, and I am going to go on a sort of long-winded rant here, so feel free to interrupt at any point in time here. But I'm going to give you an example of something. It's gonna explain a lot here.
Blurry Tony's about
Yeah,
to go in,
I'm
dude.
about to go in on this, but no, there is a bit of an example
Yeah,
here
you got
that
to
will
be clear first. All right.
yeah, there is a bit of an example here that ties into kind of what I mean by this, and that is this. Most of you out there, I think, are maybe beholden to this lifestyle inflation that comes from like living in a big city and having to, work on the latest tech stack for the job. Like you have to do, get into machine learning and let's learn it now, or learn, software engineering and learn that now, and like do all this stuff. Like, and I'm going to kind of contrast that with somebody who kind of went to the University of, I don't even want to call it the University of Uncle Sam, but it's a different. Like, you'll see in a second here. I'll start explaining this. So I had an uncle when I was growing up, and he was in and out of jail. And then he did a long stretch. He did like a 17 or 18 year stretch of prison, and I didn't see him for maybe 20 years. Literally, I think I saw him when I was 5, 6 years old, and then I didn't see him until I was 26. And it was, hey, your uncle's out of prison. Like he's gonna come live, at our place. It was my stepdad at the time. He said, hey, your uncle's gonna come live with us, and I'm like, okay, so I'll come visit, and on Thanksgiving I'll see. I haven't seen him in 20 years. So I saw him, and he if any of you guys have ever had this experience where you see somebody who's been rehabilitated, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. But for those of you who haven't, when you see somebody who's come out of jail for 20 years and the rehabilitation process worked, they're a different person, and they make you feel bad about yourself because they are so disciplined, because they're told when to eat, they're told when to they don't even open doors, they wait for the door to open for them. They're told when to pee, they can't pee unless they're told exactly that. So they already have that kind of weird disciplined mindset where it's actually refreshing to see that in a weird way, to see like, hey, this person is like very, very disciplined, and they have a positive outlook on life because they just got out of prison. So typically speaking, like this is going to be hard to understand and hard to relate to, but just take my word for it. This guy came out a different person, and I saw him, and he was at the dinner table. We were discussing things, and somebody said something negative, and he said, that's a good point, and I'm always thinking about it like this in a new positive mindset. So that's some context of the situation. This guy was in prison for the most of his adult life, so it's kind of like, how does he develop his skills to be a functioning member of society, right? That's what you're asking, right? So the answer is this: he came out and he immediately said, "Hey, I'm gonna get like a job helping this guy put on, installing roofs, because that's all he could find at the time. You come out of prison like you have a convicted felon, like you're a convicted felon, so it's hard to get certain jobs. You can't just go to Walmart and get a job. They're gonna run a background check and say, hey, you're a convicted felon, we're not gonna hire you. Although I think maybe that's changed, but my point is it's very difficult. So you got to find somebody that you got to usually find programs and say, hey, do you guys hire convicted felons? Elephant in the room. I'm a convicted. Yeah, we do, and here's why and everything. So okay, so he basically only found his roofing assistant job where he'd go help some guy install roofing stuff. But since he's been so disciplined through the system, and since that guy, like his boss or whatever at the time, whenever he told him to jump, he said how high, right? Like he just did exactly what he was told. But it's a real job. Like that's actually a real job where you're installing roofing.
Yeah.
He was able to, in literally 6 months, kind of get to understand the system and say, okay, here's how you do it. Here's all the materials you need. Here's how you even down to the point of, hey, how do I study the process of how does my boss even sell to the idea that somebody needs to get their roofing like kind of dealt with, right? So he's absorbing all that information. 6 months later, he says, hey, I'm going to start my own roofing company. And this guy has been in prison for 20 years. Like, how do you, where's your learn? You didn't go to business school. You didn't get an MBA. Like, but wait, there's more. So he got his own company going. He still worked for the other gentleman, but in his free time, he would say, hey, let me build up some clients and kind of get my own thing going and figure out what I need. And then he eventually bought a truck. And of course, he's smart about it. He bought a used truck off of maybe Craigslist at the time. I don't remember, but he didn't go out and buy like the nicest bells and whistles F350, whatever. He bought like a used truck that he just for what he needed. He got some parts, like he got everything he needed to kind of do his own thing. And yeah, the gentleman who he was working for was happy to see him go. He's like, hey, you now have your own self-sustaining roofing business, and now his net worth is more than mine. And this guy is somebody who started with literally nothing out of prison, and now he has his own roofing company who he employs people to help him to a point where he doesn't have to go on the roof anymore. So he's all set up and stuff.
Yeah.
And I think this is a perfect example of somebody who, in an unorthodox way, you might think, is kind of on the right path with the career in like a really good way. It's a purposeful career, and it pays a lot, and he's doing real stuff, right? But notice how I said unorthodox in a way that you might think. No. 20, 40, 40, 50 years ago when his parents did this, that was the normal way. That was the normal thing for somebody in the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s is to do it yourself. And that's why so many people like America, quote unquote, is because that's the American dream, right? Build it yourself. So that's the anecdote I was going to give. And I think comparing that with somebody that asks me, hey, I'm doing this programming boot camp, but I can't find a job because I've applied for a bunch of jobs on Indeed and all this stuff. It's a completely different thing than him just doing exactly what he did. It was just right in the door, get after it, and then go from there. So it's like, talk to me about your initial feedback on just that whole anecdote.
That's a great anecdote. I mean, that's a perfect example of how I want everybody to be like that, right? Like I want myself to be like that. You know what I mean? Like I look up to people like that because that's exactly how this country was built. You know, like people, and again, people had no choice back then. You know, when this country was founded, there was no option. You're coming here. Even think about the pilgrims coming here across the ocean, right? You ever look up and see like the infographics of like the number of pilgrims that like made it through the first winter? You ever seen that?
Yeah, it's yeah,
Yeah, it's like most of them are dead. You know, or like entire families just gone. You know, just they tried it. They got on the boat and they went across the ocean. They did their best, and it wasn't good enough, and they're dead. Right. That was the stakes that these people were playing for. Right. Our lives today are just not like that. The stakes are just not that high. Like if you got to think of it like that. If people were willing to do that, capable of taking such a huge risk, not just financially, but taking the lives in their hands and taking the lives of their families in their hands to go across the ocean and build something new in a new place that they've never been to before, that nobody's ever been to before. They don't even know what to expect. And they encountered incredible difficulties that you will never have to deal with. How hard is it for you to take your programming knowledge and try to build a product of your own and then market it? Like
right,
what is really the risk that you're in? What is so bad about that? That's so scary that you can't do it, right?
right.
Like this guy coming out of prison, man, that's like such a worse position than I've ever been in,
Same
right? And
here.
I think about it's a good story because I think about myself as like a lot of times I do think, oh man, it's just so hard. You know, what am I gonna do? Like, how am I gonna make this happen? You know, but then I was like, okay, well, I don't have a felony record. You know, like if I need to get a job like stat, I can. Like, you know, it might not be a good one, but I can support myself very easily.
Yeah,
But here's a guy who is relying almost basically almost forced to rely on the generosity of others
right.
who are willing to hire a felon, and more than that, willing to train him and willing to even let him continue to work for him while he's like competing with him, right?
Hmm.
So this guy had to get so many breaks, but he took advantage of every single one of them, right? When the breaks come his way, he's ready to catch it and to run with it. And that's awesome. I mean, that's exactly what I want everybody to be like. And I think the most important thing about your story is there was no government agency there to hold his hand, right, the whole way. Like there was no there's no speak of like welfare checks or like universal basic income or like free health care. There's none of that.
No
It's
halfway
the government is
houses.
absent. The government is absent from that story, which is
Yeah,
exactly where they should be, right? Like out
yeah.
of the way.
Yeah, and it's like you said, it's inspirational to me because I always think like, yeah, I don't have a convicted felon, like I don't have a felony record, and I'm not doing as well as he
Right.
is. So I always look up to him in that way, and I think like, okay, do I really need to go to prison for 20 years? Is that what I need to do to become successful?
Right. Is it
Like,
worth
sure,
it?
is that where you get your real? Is that where you get like?
Yeah.
Is that the school of hard knocks? Because like
Literally get locked in, you know?
literally, yeah, I was gonna say he's locked in, but I don't even want to use that word because like he's not locked in, he's
Yeah.
unlocked. So it's like
Yeah.
literally he was
Yeah.
locked in, and it's like obvious when the way he carries himself. And I know you've probably seen people like this, but the way he carries himself, he's so polite and he holds his tongue, and he's one of those guys who's almost military style, where you see it like
Yeah.
talk about politics, don't talk about and all that stuff, and he's getting after it in his own way, and he's not. Yeah, he's never even like we let him stay at, or I guess my stepdad let him stay at his house and stuff. So it's one of those like, yeah, hey, like he doesn't need the government to rely on that. Like he's got like a good faith connection, like a family and stuff. It's a perfect
Yeah.
story in my opinion because like I think there's a bunch of people out there that are just like that. We just don't hear about it.
Yeah.
Because I've got a lot of friends that, like, and anecdotal evidence of people that say, "Hey, I was addicted to alcohol for like 6 years. I was living in this big city. I was working at a bunch of restaurants and doing paying $3,000 a month for whatever a hotel apartment complex, whatever. And I got out of there. and I moved to kind of the countryside and figured out a different way to kind of live about, or I moved to Florida or Texas, whatever. And then, then I started my whole like electrician apprenticeship where I started like whatever a program. And now hey, I spent 5 years now. I own my own house. I do my own thing. So it's like, I got people that are like that in my life where I'm thinking, okay, maybe the apprenticeship route is the route. Cause that's essentially what my uncle did. It's sort of like an apprenticeship, but it's his own
Yeah.
accelerated version of it. Cause I mean, he's, whatever, but it's just, that's what I think is a solution to a lot of people right now is like do something that actually could give you purpose, but don't search for purpose from that thing. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm. Hmm.
So
Yep, I completely agree. Yeah, just make sure you're accurately contextualizing what you're doing in your life, and don't expect purpose where it's not really meant to be. I mean, we don't live in a world where most jobs are giving purpose. Maybe we did at one point, we don't now. So you got to find it somewhere else. So
right.
that's the key to me.
And I think that's a literal perfect segue to what's a good response to the claim that all of men's issues are caused by the patriarchy. So that is the first question of today from Reddit. And the title of the question is just the title. So it's literally just what's a good response to the claim that all of men's issues are caused by the patriarchy. So I guess kicking it
Okay,
over to you.
you want me to answer? Yeah, okay. I'll accept the pass. All right. So I'm going to answer this question by moving myself into the position to understand who I'm speaking to, and I
Right.
don't mean Tony. I mean somebody who would say something like that is like is a feminist. Let's put it that way. Like this is a feminist talking point, right? That like okay, men may have issues, but they cause them themselves. The
Right.
patriarchy, right?
Right.
The patriarchy, whatever that is, right? Um, so when I'm speaking to this person, I would say the patriarchy isn't real. Okay, like or if it's real, it's just the natural state of the world. You know, so if you told me men have problems, but we created them for ourselves, you didn't really just say anything. Like you didn't actually say anything at all, because every problem that we encounter in the whole world is created by ourselves, right? There is no real, the only real problems are what to eat and how to get shelter, right? That those are real problems that we did not create for ourselves, okay? But that's not the problems that they're talking about, obviously. They're talking about things like men are lonely, that it's hard to support a family, that meeting and dating women is hard, right? Those are the problems that they're talking about. And the feminist is going to say this is caused by the patriarchy. Okay, it's just demonstrably false, right? These problems did not exist when there was an actual patriarchy. In the 1800s, these were not real problems. Okay, like yes, men got sad. Okay, and maybe they felt lonely from time to time, but it wasn't like they're having a hard time on Tinder, so they're getting depressed about it, right? That didn't exist. So how does it? It doesn't make any sense to say every man's issue is caused by the patriarchy, unless you just mean to say that all human problems are caused by our flaws and our failures to maintain good societies, in which case yeah, okay, you're right, but then again you're just saying that problems are caused by human beings is all you're really saying,
Right.
right? So just to quickly like summarize that, I would say you're missing the point, because number one, you think that the patriarchy is something that we created or just made up, other than or instead of just it being the natural state of the world. And number two, you think that there's some alternative to patriarchy,
Right.
which again is false, because there is simply the way things are and there's no other way. You want it to be one way, but it's the other way. You know, that's what I would say.
Yeah, and that's perfectly illustrated. And I love the Wire quote at the end there, and try to sneak that
Yeah.
past me. But no, I think
Yeah.
I'm gonna yes and you, as Vinny would say. This question was asked on a subreddit called Men's Rights. So I'm assuming this gentleman, this individual, probably had some confrontation with somebody and said, hey, men have all these issues. Like they're lonely. They have a high unalive rate. They have like they have hard jobs. Like they're rejected by a lot of women. Like they have issues. And I'm sure like whoever he was talking to, exactly like you said, is probably from that feminist angle and said, well, all of their issues are caused by the patriarchy. And now he's probably thinking, well, nice little that was a checkmate. So how do I deal with that, right? So the true situation, how to deal with that, is very simple, and it is the Jordan Peterson way. And it's just literally, I know it sounds weird, but you literally just say, oh, what's the patriarchy? and that's it. So that's pretty much how you
Yeah.
solve it, because you're gonna like that's what you're asking us. You're asking us what to. That's by asking us what to do about that. You're basically asking the same question that I would ask: is what is the patriarchy? Because, and as Dean alluded to, that's just the current. That's just the state of affairs. So that word, that basically a sentence means, well, all of your issues are caused by the current state of affairs.
Yeah, exactly.
And so imagine their face if somebody said to you, like, oh, hey, I just got laid off at my fake job because I was beholden to it. And and the fake jobs are kind of the first ones to go during layoffs, which I forgot to mention, but that's part of the whole fake job thing. My girlfriend just walked on me because, I don't have enough income, and she's kind of seeing somebody else anyway. And he's better than me in every aspect. What else happened? I got put in jail because I accidentally like jaywalked, and we live in a nanny state where I'm not allowed to do that, so I didn't want to pay the fine, so I went to jail for 2 weeks. Anyway, all that stuff, right? These are all my problems. Like, what do I do? And then also, like, I'm really thinking about unaliving myself because I've been taking some Zoloft because my female psychiatrist says it's what I should be doing, and I got my triple vaccine and everything, and I'm really locked into the whole Zoloft world, but I'm still thinking about the unaliving thing. So what do I do, right? And so you're saying that to somebody, and then my response is, well, all your problems are because of the state of affairs.
Yeah.
And so your question is like, you're almost like a Python script. If you're Chat GPT, you're just going to say, hey, okay, so I got laid off just now because I have a fake job. And you're going to say the same thing over and over again because like that doesn't answer you, right? So if you're talking to somebody
Right.
in good faith, which you're probably not doing on both sides of the equation, it's not going to go anywhere. But if you're talking to somebody in good faith, if you're talking to somebody not in good faith, it's not going to go anywhere. But if you're talking to somebody in good faith about this, and they say something like that, hey, the current, it's caused by the patriarchy. Just ask them, okay, what is the patriarchy? A, and B, like, is that ever going to change? And is there anything I can do to change that? Like, why is that relevant to bring that up?
Right.
And also the broader picture here, man. Like, don't argue with this person. And like, there's
Yeah.
it's just solve your problems. Like, get them solved. They're obviously not gonna solve them for you, and they don't care that you have the problems. And honestly, nobody cares really. I mean, I care. Dean cares. We all care at Maneuver because we understand that that's a real thing.
Right.
But this person, this NPC you're talking to, doesn't care. They're gonna move on to the next thing. Like, they're not locked in like that. And I think if you're trying to equip yourself to kind of debate them into agreeing with you. It's one thing if you don't actually have these problems and you're just letting them know, hey, some people have these problems, and it's kind of a thing. What do we do to solve them? And if their answer is just to blow you off the current state of affairs, yeah, that's one thing. The different angle. I'm just asking them to define that patriarchy and then go from there, because that's an easy way to kind of tear that narrative down. They don't even know what that is, so that's one way to do it. But if you're actually venting to somebody and saying, hey, I got all these problems, like, what do I do? And they tell you the patriarchy, my patriarchy, that person it shouldn't even be in your life. They're not going to help you. And also, you shouldn't even be asking them for advice on your problems. Like, you should just attack your problems one by one. So, yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I would say about that.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I was going at it as like a debate thing, and yeah, I think it's just a silly question, to be honest with you. But
Yeah, it's a silly answer
yeah,
too. Like,
I mean, yeah, that's really what I mean. It's a silly answer, but
Yeah.
I get that people will encounter that.
yeah.
All right, I could read the next one if you're ready. Well,
I
it's a
think
bit.
yeah, I think we're wrapped up on that
It's a
one.
okay. Yeah, this one's a bit long, so I'll just quickly summarize. In fact, maybe I'll just read the title. I don't
The
even
title
know
might
if
be
there's
good enough
much
for this one. Yeah.
Yeah. The title is this: I got a girl pregnant, and we're both 18. I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's a
So
lot of text with it,
that's
but
that's
you
a
don't like
and that's a bomb, right? That is.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
just dropped a bomb on me, right? I know we're alternating here, but so for that one, it's let's sit down, and I would like this individual to be able to sit down in a room with me so I can discuss it just further with them. But this is more,
yeah,
hey, I'm talking at you now, so this is me talking at you. And first thing you want to do is delete this thread and don't read any of the comments at all. Literally, that's the first thing. So first thing, delete the thread, don't read any of the comments. And if you've already read them, unread them if you can. Like, just kind of do like a
yeah. Delete that Men in Black.
revert your brain to a different state where you didn't hear those comments, and immediately I think, and it's going to sound ironic because I'm an atheist here, but go to your local Orthodox church or your local Catholic church if you can find one, and try to get involved in that community, and start talking to them and saying, hey, I've got this girl, and we're she's pregnant, like, I've got the situation, like, I need to find religion, like, look for religion, you need to find it. So get involved, go to church, do that immediately, and try to start building up a life to where you and this woman that you have now, impregnated, can have a future together where the child is going to be having a good life, right? So notice how I didn't say anything that all that Reddit would say, right? I'm immediately jumping to, you're having this child. Think about that as a reality. You will have this child. It's happening. Now, convince yourself of that, like admit that as a reality, and then figure out how to have it in a good way. So how do I? And this is perfect question for today because we talked about trade school, we talked about all that stuff. Like you're 18 right now, so luckily hopefully you got parents involved in the picture that are willing to kind of help you out a little bit. But you need to immediately start right now finding communities and getting on track to having a sustainable lifestyle. So if that means moving out of the city, that means moving out of the city. If that means getting into an apprenticeship program for like becoming an electrician, do that immediately. If that means getting a job that is just a bare bones job, like you have to do something right now today, not tomorrow, not next week, not yesterday, like yes yesterday, but not tomorrow, not next week. Immediately go this Sunday, go to a Catholic church, go to a Orthodox church, and talk to a pastor and start talking. Hey, tell them exactly what you just said to us. Say, hey, that we're 18, she's pregnant, I'm not ready. Help me. Like, what do I do? Help, literally. And then they'll take care of you, man. They will take you in and be good faith about it. Show up every week. Be good faith about it. And again, this is ironic because this will be Dean's answer, but I'm kind of saying it because this is what you need, dude. And then after that, talk to your parents, talk to her parents, and just say, hey, like, sit them down and say, hey, she's pregnant. I'm, we didn't intend on like planning this to happen, but it happened. And I need all four of you guys and all six of us in a room here. And I'll kind of talk about the plan of moving forward and how we're going to make the kind of best environment for the child. After that, sit her down one-on-one. I know this is a crazy answer, but after that, sit her down one-on-one and say, hey, what's our plan? Because like, we're having the child, like we need to make it good for both of us. Like, are we hopefully going to be able to stay together and figure this out together? Like I want to. And this is the thing. This is the hard moment for you. You need to convince yourself that you are willing to sit down and stay together with her, like no matter what her flaws are. I don't even want to read the context. Like I don't even want. Hopefully she has no flaws, but you have to understand that you're locked in right now, and so make that work. Make that work. Get that done. If she doesn't want to make it work with you, that's one thing, but just make it work, dude. Just for the next 20 years, you're with this girl. Just think of her as your wife. Like you have to kind of dial that in. And so hopefully she doesn't have any like really big red flags as a thing, but. That's it. That's the only advice I'm going to give, and that's hopefully it's a nuclear situation which needs nuclear advice, and that's what I would do in that order. So
yeah, I think that's great advice. And my answer won't be that much different. But I'm going to just this is like father-son time, right? Like I'm not that much older than you. I can't actually be your dad, but well, I could be, but I'm not. But anyway, here's what I would say for number one: calm down. It's going to be okay, right? Like don't be so scared because I know he's scared. I mean, I didn't read the text, but I guarantee you he's scared to death, right? So number one, I would say relax. Okay, this is not the end of the world. Your life is not over. Okay, it's not going to be a challenge that you cannot overcome. Okay, there is nothing about having a child that is beyond your capability. In fact, it's quite the opposite. You were built to do this. You are made for this exact purpose. Okay, so it came a little bit sooner than maybe you wanted it to, maybe with somebody that you weren't expecting to do this with, but it's here, and it's time to just kind of deal with it. Okay, so that's what I would say. Number one, find a way to relax, and you got to make peace with this. And this the most important thing you do is make peace with this. Okay, and I'm speaking from experience. Okay, because Tony knows I have a daughter myself. Right, she's 10 years old, and I had her with a woman who I never dated at all, right? It was a casual hookup kind of thing, right? And I did this, again, it was 10 years ago, so this was way before I had God in my life, way before I had any kind of purpose or sense of what to do. I mean, I was totally lost, confused. So this happened to me, and I know exactly what not to do, right? Which is why I'm starting with relax, because all I did was freak out about it, right? And I made the worst possible choices one after the other because of that. I won't get into them, but I did not handle it well, right? And to this day, I'm trying to make up for it, right? It's not been an easy road, but it didn't have to be that way because I realize now that I was really scared of nothing. There's nothing to be scared of. Like, in fact, it's a good thing. Like now I see it as a good thing. I'm glad it happened, right? But at the time, I was so wrapped up in my emotions and my anxiety and my thinking, like, I don't even like this person. How could this happen? This is just the worst thing in the whole world. It's not that bad. So that's number one. And number two is once you've made peace with it, which again, you got to make that your number one priority, however you got to do it, go to church. I think that's a great advice from, again, my secular friend here who promotes the faith more than I do at this point, which I think is great. But Get to a church. Absolutely, it's a great place to go. You're going to get some good advice. You're going to find ways that, there's community there. There's avenues for support that you're going to need. Hopefully, your parents can get involved, or her parents can get involved, and help you guys get started. Get on your feet. But if there's any chance at all that you can have a relationship with this girl, I'm hoping you guys are already in a relationship, and this is just sort of, I know, another thing going on. But that you really got to prioritize this as like, we need to make this stick together. We need two parents here. We both need to work together. We're both in this together. It's a challenge we have to face together, and we're going to do that. So make peace with it, and then start getting your ducks in a row. And really, once you're at peace with it, hopefully you're going to see that it's really not that hard to get your ducks in a row. You got to get a job. I mean, that's kind of all you have to do, right? I mean, she's got the more difficult job at this point, right? Like you just kind of got to worry about the finances and getting a job. And there's a million ways. I mean, you're so young that you really have a million options in terms of how you're going to find a career. I mean, we're already thinking about that. Like, what am I going to do? What am I going to go to college for? So just make sure you lock in that respect. But hopefully this answer can like quell the anxiety a little bit. Like I just want to make it clear that this is not the end of the world. Okay, exactly. Like you're okay. Yeah. It's all good, man. Like you got a kid on the way. Just one day you're gonna look back and you're gonna be thrilled. You're gonna love this child. When in a year when the child is out into the world, you're gonna be happy. You're gonna love the kid, and you're gonna be glad that they're there in your life. So trust me that it's true, and that it's not the end of the world. You don't, all this fear that you have inside you, all this anxiety, doesn't need to be there, and you can work on it, and it will go away, and everything will be okay after that. That's my main answer.
No, that's good. That's very good, and it is calming even hearing that just from you. Like, just I'm imagining myself as an 18-year-old and listening to Father Dean here, and that actually calmed me down a little bit. But Great, I did actually read the question, so I do want to kind of go over some of the details now that we've done top down, because I'm detail oriented, kind of, a little bit of Bill Maher style, I'm messing with you. No, but so he says, he says, oh, we aren't together, had a brief relationship prior that wasn't working for either of us, but are good friends. So that's already kind of like let's see where you're going with this. She lives across the country currently, which isn't helping our situation. So she plans to move shortly after the baby is born. He says that she's going to move kind of where he is. She's insistent that she can financially support herself and the baby. She works in aged care, and that she doesn't want any money from me, just love for the baby, which shouldn't be hard, and to buy things for them occasionally. And then he goes on and says how he's in university, and that she doesn't want him to like drop out of university. Like, she's saying, don't drop out of university, etc. And like the current plan is for the child to live at her place when she moves here full time, because I'm not able to afford my own place, even with part-time work, etc., because his area of where he lives is in a rental crisis. So I've already deduced enough about this situation to kind of know everything I need to know about it. And he goes on to mention custody, etc. But listen, this situation is going to be a lot easier if you understand like kind of more things about what's really going to be going on here, right? So if you're saying you're already using words like she can afford to financially support herself and the baby. Because she works in aged care, like that verbiage needs to be like dismissed from your vocabulary. Like, when she's giving birth, a couple months before she gives birth, she's not going to be in a position to be able to work, and then obviously like after the baby's born, like she shouldn't be working for. Some people say a few months, but I think a year minimum. She shouldn't be working, and you need to be like, I think you need to be around her, like. The problem is that you're in a context where you're saying that you're not in a relationship with her. But I know human nature, and I know how humans work. If she moves near you, you will be, especially with a kid involved, you will evolve back into a relationship with her. Like, that's probably going to happen, unless there's some crazy red flag, or you're actually stopping yourself from like allowing that, like mentally, with some mental block, because she's not a perfect 10, or she's not whatever. Like, and again, I'm assuming a lot here. But there is going to be a situation where she moves near you, and then you guys start seeing each other again because of the baby and everything. And there's emotions in the room. There's oxytocin. There's all this stuff. And, oh, no, somehow we're back together, So get in a room with her today, now, tomorrow, whatever, and start discussing this stuff. Because you're talking about stuff like she's able to financially support herself and the baby. Like, dude, she's going to be out of the picture financially for at least a year minimum, I think. And she should be encouraged to go further with it. And because the baby needs to be bonding with the mother. That's a normal thing. Like, it's a not normal thing for the baby to be dropped off at a daycare program that's kind of expensive, so that the mother can go be a slave to like a CEO or whatever,
Yeah,
just to
it's a
make
fake problem
a couple more dollars, and offset the cost,
or a
whatever.
fake job.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I think like if you're not being told this already, like get a job immediately, like try to get work immediately, and try to get the relationship to work again. I don't know the exact details of the breakup, but you're 18, so probably nothing crazy happened. And you did enough to, well, actually, I'm assuming that this is your know for sure that this is your baby. I guess if you really
yeah.
think it's yours, then
Good
treat it
point.
like it's yours. But I'm not even gonna go
Yeah,
demonically say take a paternity test because that's already like I don't even want to encourage that. But yeah, just I think get involved in the picture and try to get like the money situation figured out and try to work on it together. Now, if you're unwilling to
yeah,
100% say, hey, I'm out of the picture, I'm gone 100%, I think you need to figure out a way to commit to that portion of it because there is no half measures when it comes to like raising a child. Like that's not a thing. I mean, I know people try to make it a thing in
yeah,
the form of like no fault divorce, stepdaddery, etc. But it's not really a thing that should be encouraged, especially by me, the secular
yeah.
kind of the secular Catholic here is not. I don't want to encourage that. So
The secular Catholic.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I'd say, given those details, he's looking for a way out. Like you can tell in the way and again, I understand that he's an 18-year-old, and I know he's just a ball of anxiety right now. So it's not surprising to me that he's looking for ways out. But hopefully, I would encourage him to make peace with the reality of what's going on, and then understand that looking for a way out is not really the right play, right? Like that's not the way to do it. Like that's just hiding from the issue,
no,
and you're not built to hide from problems. You're a man. You're built to take them on and deal with them.
right.
So hopefully, once he makes peace with it, he'll see that that's not the thing to do. And she's saying all these things. I don't need you to help. I don't know why she says women
I
say
know
stuff
why. I
like
know why she
that.
says that. Yeah,
Obviously,
we know why.
well, yeah. I mean, it either way, that's the wrong way to look at it, right? It's not about helping. It's about that's your child.
It's
So
your child. Yeah,
there's no
don't help.
help. There's no you're not helping anybody do anything. It's
Like
your
you either
kid. You got to
discovered a
take care of your
star or you
kid.
didn't discover a star. You didn't help discover the star.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
So
Yeah.
it's kind of
So yeah, he's looking for a way out, but I hope he doesn't find it. To be honest, he'd be happier if he doesn't. I mean,
no.
you got to
I
take the
agree.
problem.
I agree.
You got to take the problem head on. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a perfect segue into the third question here, and I do want to say one more thing about that. I do like that question because it's something that if I was 18 and I had a child right now, I'm 30 something. I'm 33. I would be kind of my
Yeah.
child would be like 15 or something like that. So it's like
Yeah.
if I was right
Yeah.
now and I already had a 15-year-old, like I'd be able to kind of run around in a crazy way with him. You know what I mean? Like like
Yeah.
it'd be fun to
Yeah.
mess around
The
and like
hard part is over at that point.
yeah,
I feel like,
yeah.
like, yeah.
But yeah. So anyway, next question here. It's from a different subreddit and it kind of we were going to talk about it last week, but last week we had such a kind of in-depth conversation about a broad picture of the whole red pill going into it. So this one is kind of was geared for that, but it is tied into this in some ways. So we'll bring it in. It's a question specifically says question for women. Why do women seem to struggle to honestly admit to preferences which might be considered shallow? So that's the title, and the details of this are outside of the occasional pick me and white knight. Men will admit to having shallow preferences for girls with big breasts or a fat ass all the time.
Mhm.
And while sometimes it's met with comments like "quote unquote" men are pigs. People just seem to accept reality and get over it. In my experience, women often fall into only one of two extremes. One, women will completely deny any shallow preferences at all and instead claim, despite all contrary evidence, that any man is attractive so long as he exhibits basic human decency and to the capacity to wipe his own ass. It's kind of funny. And then the other extreme is
Yeah, it's funny.
it's equally dishonest, quote unquote. Actually, pretty good. This person's pretty good at writing style, by the way.
Fairly
Anyway,
based. Yeah.
on the other equally dishonest extreme, women will overcompensate with completely outlandish and exaggerated claims. They'll declare that they won't settle for anyone who isn't 6'5" millionaire with a 9-inch portfolio, even if they would happily partner with somebody who is someone they're equal. They identify as queens who know their own worth, and they will announce their preferences from rooftops for all to hear, regardless of how shallow it might make them to appear. The rest of it, he's just going on to ask like literally specific questions about kind of the situation, but he or she just described the whole context of it. So basically, yeah, why do women seem to struggle to honestly admit to preferences which might be considered shallow? And then there's these two extremes given. So kicking it over to you, I guess. What do you think about the initials?
Yeah, so I'll get myself into the hot water, which I've been not afraid to do this whole time we've been talking about any kind of women's issues. It's because they don't know that about themselves. Okay, simple thing is that if you, the one thing you understand about women is they don't know what they want. They don't know what they like until it's in front of their faces. They genuinely don't know. Like they're not even lying. So I guess that's the key here. They're not being dishonest. They think that they really want that. It's so funny too because if you see women any kind of post on social media about this subject, they all say the same thing. We just want a guy who's nice. Oh, you can anybody as long as you're funny. We don't care how much money you make. It doesn't matter. Just be kind to us and send us a good morning text and buy us flowers. That's all we care about. That's all we like because they know that's what they should like. Of course, everybody, that's what you should like. You should want to be treated well and be doted on as a woman. I mean, that's what you're supposed to want. But they, but until they're shown the opposite, they don't believe it. So until they're actually treated like with a little bit of contempt and treated sort of like disposable and treated like by a man that doesn't need them and doesn't really care whether they come or go, and they realize how attractive that is to them, they don't know it. They truly don't understand it. So I guess that's the key thing here is that women just don't know themselves for the most. I mean, there's women who do know this, and God bless them, they're honest, right? And they're the few that actually tell the truth about it because they interrogate themselves and they see, yeah, I mean, I just prefer to be with a man who doesn't need me. You know, I like the aloofness. I like the challenge of like trying to get him to like me. I like that. I want to feel like I'm the one who's chasing the guy because every other guy in the world chases me and that gets boring after a while. Like there's no difficulty in that. I just post a picture on Instagram and I've got 20 guys in my DMs telling me how pretty I am. What's another dude in my DMs telling me how pretty I am? It doesn't add anything to my life. But what about this guy? Why doesn't he tell me I'm pretty? Why not? I want to find out why. Hey, what's going on with you? Oh, you don't care about me? Why not? I'm pretty, aren't I? Don't you like me? Don't you want me? And he doesn't want you. Oh, well, I'm gonna win him over. I can win him. He thinks I'm not pretty. I'll show him. You know, that's how it goes. I mean, it's silly. It sounds ridiculous to a man, but that's how their minds work. You know, so they're not. I guess that's the main thing I would say. They're not being dishonest. They just don't know.
Yeah, I think there's some that, like you said, there's some that know, and there's some that are being dishonest in a way that I understand and can be okay with because they don't want to say the thing out loud that is the inconvenient truth that will offend somebody, right? So there's those two, and then the third one is the ones that just don't know, right? So
Yeah,
those are the three, I think, right? And
yeah,
I'm gonna pull this back away, abstract from women, and put it in more of a generalized situation, which I don't like doing, generally speaking. But this one, it'll make sense because we've been talking about this the whole episode. Think about this: about if you're, what are your expectations for a job? Are your expectations that you're gonna go to work and your boss is gonna give you a lot of compliments to make you feel good, and you're gonna have like everybody on your team is gonna say really encouraging words to you all the time, and you're gonna do like you're gonna be given employee of the month? Are you gonna be excited? Like, is that what your expectations for in a job, or are expectations for a job? My paycheck says this much per week, and my amount of work I have to do is this much, right? Like you have real expectations, right? And no one is
yeah.
going to say, in the context of the job, no one is going to be too embarrassed to admit that the second thing is what they want, not the first thing, right? That's something
Right.
that's not quote unquote politicized in some ways. It's getting there. But that psyop didn't work. Like there was a psyop that said, "Hey, you need to kind of look for a job that's where the company makes you feel good, and they care more about you than the paycheck." That didn't work because people aren't that stupid, luckily. And for those of you that are, watch the rest of the episode and understand that the fake job
Yeah, you
mindset.
skipped too far ahead. Yeah,
Yeah.
if you're one of those people, you're skipped ahead.
If you're
You got to
watching
go
a
back.
clip, check out the full video, and you'll
Yeah,
see kind of what we're talking about.
yeah,
But so
yeah,
what I'm saying is, and going abstract to make it make sense from a double gender perspective, because both women and men, I think this is good advice for, is admit your standards for jobs like that. Everyone already is fine with that. Now double click on dating. So if you're dating and you're a woman and you're saying, hey, like I'm not going to date somebody unless they're 6'5", 9 inches portfolio, and six figures, what have you. That is an ultra hypergamous situation, right? So it's like that is literally like there's even a meme, there's a website like called how I don't even know what it's called, but there's like a whole, I'm sure you've seen, it's like a delusion tracker that tells you to plug in some
yeah,
metrics and say, okay, I'm going to put 6'5", the salary is 100K, and then I don't think you could put the third thing because that's not
The
reported. But
portfolio size, yeah,
yeah,
probably not.
but there's stuff like that. They could put age. They put age there and stuff. So you could
Yeah.
tell like how many men out there are like that fit that criteria, and the numbers are actually kind of insane. Like it's very very low. Like people, there's almost less than 1% or less than even 0.5% of men are even above 6'2". So that's already a thing that's filtering way out.
Yeah.
So what I will say is this: this has gotten way way worse in the last 10 years due to Match, which is I believe that's that conglomerate that owns.
Match Group.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they own Tinder,
Yep.
Bumble. It's Coffee Meets Bagel. All those,
Every dating app.
yeah, all
All of
those psyops.
All of them.
So the reason that
Yeah.
that is a thing is because it's allowed. It's given women the illusion of, oh, I can actually just pre-filter everybody to make it to be that 1%, and then I only have to show up and meet, 1% because I'm going to actually have a long-lasting relationship with 1%. And we all know, as men, we all know that. Maybe some of you don't. Maybe this is why you're asking. As men, most of us know that if you're filtering, blurry Tony comes back into the picture. If you're filtering,
Look at Tony hooking up again.
if you're filtering for 1% here, and let me unblur myself. Okay, so if you're filtering for 1%, that person who's on the other side of the line, obviously it doesn't make sense for him to be dating like there's only 1% of people, so they're not going to be able to have a full committed relationship with all the women, right? So but they're all filtering for that one guy. So is that one guy going to have a committed long-term relationship with all of them? No, of course he can't. So the hard pill to swallow is that you're filtering for those 1%, and it's actually bad for women because now they're not even going to be able to get a committed relationship because they're now trained to have to filter for those smaller group of people to now
Yeah.
allow them to have that. They're just going to be kind of a one night stand or like a one and done or what have you, and they're going to be unsatisfied and keep going and keep filtering, and that's the problem that it brings in. So what I think, to answer your question, I think it's the dating apps that have caused this epidemic, and because I think 20, 30, 40 years ago, like a woman would have just said, hey, I'm looking for, realistic standards, not a nice guy who makes me feel
Right.
good, but they're looking for somebody who, hey, I'm kind of about a 6, maybe I'm a 7. Physically speaking, I want a 6 or a 7, maybe an 8. Of course I'll date a 9 or 10 physically, but that's kind of what they would have said back then. And then they would have said, as far as the career stuff goes, like the answer was, can he afford to put food on the table, right? I mean, and back then,
Yep.
we didn't have as much of a fake economy back then, so you could really do that on a Walmart salary. You know what I'm saying? So
Right.
a lot of problems come from
Right.
this. It's actually all connected because everything is everything, and the fake problems kind of bring
Yeah.
into it. But I think nowadays they're not likely to have. They're so much more likely to have ridiculous standards. But 90% of those women, if not 100, if they meet a person in real life, not on these dating apps, and they're not they're not going to check all those boxes, but they check some, maybe if they check one or two. They're gonna date them 100%. They're gonna date them. They're gonna be, oh hey, you're making me interested. Like let's talk. Let's go. Like, do you have the X Factor? Do you got the? Are you Anthony Rizzo with the Riz? Not the 7-figure salary, but like, are you the Rizzler? You know what I'm saying? So it's kind of like to and again I'm long-winded here, but the maneuver prescription for you as a man to maneuver around what is reality and what is the hypergamous situation is uninstall all your dating apps, go outside, touch grass so to speak, but again, find hobbies where you can find women outside that are doing things that you like to do, and they might not be locked in and dialed into this a dating addicted situation, which we're going to get into next episode because women are addicted to dating, and that's an interesting thing. But you're going to find women out there that are saying, hey, my standards are kind of slightly above regular, which is totally fine. But if you impress me in person and we have a good connection and whatever, I actually don't have those standards, right? So understand that standards are standards for a reason. Just like the job standards, and again, I'm super long-winded here, but it's all connected. Just like your job standards, hey, I want to make $200,000 a year. That's my standard. That's not your standard. That's a negotiating tactic, okay? So that's exactly what it is for the woman. I'm only going to date somebody who's 6'5". Well, that's a negotiating tactic for them because now they can have a 5'10" guy who's 1 inch above average. So that's kind of
Right.
we'll meet you in the middle. You
Right.
know what I mean? So that's kind of where that goes.
Yeah, exactly.
But
Yeah.
kicking it back
That's
over
a
to you.
great. No, that's a great way to put it. And yeah, the dating apps are clearly cancer on our society, and I think a major driver of this. And even just to go a little bit further than that, I think feminism itself has contributed to this sense that women can do no wrong, and every urge and desire that they have should be fulfilled. And they have the right to have them fulfilled, right? Like it's a silly thing. What does that even mean? You have the right to a husband who's over 6 feet tall. What are you talking about, right?
Yeah.
But that's how they think. So I think it's a combination of factors, and also one thing I think so you mentioned like the three groups, right? You have the few tiny percentage of women who know it and are honest and say the truth, then the ones who simply don't know the truth and so they can't be honest, and then there's ones who do know the truth but are not honest, right? And now, why does this? I don't think we quite addressed that, so I'll quickly talk about that. Now, why would this group exist? So, and it's not just because they're all evil liars. Okay, some of them may be, right? It's not because they're all evil liars. There's a key thing going on here with the psychology of women, which is that, let's say, okay, so I think the majority fall in the camp of they don't know, and they're not really lying. They just don't really understand themselves. But if they do understand themselves, but they're still not really fully being honest, it's not necessarily just because they're an evil liar. It's because as a woman, they really need to fit into the group. Okay, so this is like a biological evo psych kind of explanation. So take it with a grain of salt if you want to, but this is how I see the world. Is that women must fit into the group for survival. Okay, like if we go back to the hunter gatherer days, which I think you should do all the time because that's where we were evolved. So that's like where our brains are meant to be. So in the hunter gatherer days, a woman who was like exiled from the tribe for not fitting in or for causing too much disturbances is dead. She's either dead or she's going to experience some horrific torture by the enemy tribe, and that's just not a fate that she wants. It's absolutely critical that she does not rock the boat. Right, so she must be as milk toast as possible in all things. Right, and you'll see this is how women are. I mean, it perfectly explains women's opinions. That's why most women are Democrats, because they don't because the Democrat is it's the safe opinion. It's the opinion that says I don't want to offend anyone. I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. If somebody needs help, I think we should give it to them. Not me personally, of course, but we quote unquote should give it to them. And we got to take care of people. And this is sort of the milk toast woman mindset that they are sort of forced to have by evolution. I mean, it's just the way that they're built. So I think there's also an element of that going on when women don't say the full truth. Now, in those cases, you'll probably get just sort of white lies. Like, for example, they'll be like, "Oh, I love it when a man brings me flowers." Okay, but what's unsaid there is, as long as he's not ugly, and as long as it's not like on the first date, as long as he's not being super desperate about it, or as long as he makes enough money, like all those things can go unsaid, and then it's like a half lie, right? And it's like, oh, I don't really care if a guy's tall, as long as he's really hilarious and is like has perfect charisma and makes a lot of money, like that all these things go unsaid, right? But they're not really lying. You see what I'm saying? So this is another thing just you got to keep it in mind is that when you hear a woman's opinion, you're hearing the most milk toast possible interpretation of what they truly think. So that I would say that I just want to touch on that. So that's like the third group
Right.
of possibilities here. Yeah.
Right. And I think ultimately, and you'll agree with this as a summary of a kind of a solution to what you just said, is don't let what they say, their preferences are, affect your attempt at acquiring them as a potential like dating candidate. So what I mean
Right.
by that is, if they say, "Hey, I won't date anybody who's from India," and you're from India, ignore that. Just say, "Hey, okay,
Yeah.
cool. I'm from India, but
Yeah.
hey, guess what? Like, we're talking. What do you think about this? What do you think about that?" And then you'll make her laugh. Whatever you might break her whole ideology because you're that guy. You're that one guy from India that changed her view. And this happens all the
Absolutely.
time.
Yeah.
It's something that and it's not. This isn't specific to women in dating. This is more also related to other things in general. So it's just break their boundaries, break their understanding of what of what they view as their standards, right? So that's what I'll say.
Yeah. Yeah, the checklists that you were talking about, like that come from like the dating app culture, like not every girl, but a lot women, many women today, and even men have like a checklist of things that they need in a partner, quote unquote, need. Again, it's a negotiating tactic, right? If a girl says she doesn't date guys under 6 feet and you're 5'9", ignore it. Just go try it anyway. See what happens. Like, if you don't know what you can do, like, and hey, it may not work. I mean, there's probably a very high chance that it's not going to work, but you try it anyway, just because there's nothing to lose. Like, that's one thing about dating. There's very little on the line. It's just a no. That's it. So you can literally see like the hottest girl at the bar or whatever social event you're at, and you may think, nah, there's no way. She's super gorgeous. There's no way she'd ever consider talking to me. Get that mindset out of you. Get it out of here because you're every other guy in there thinks the same thing. So you being the dude who is like pushes that out of his mind and just has like a level of confidence to
Right.
even try, that alone puts you closer than you may think,
Yeah.
right? And again, I'm not saying that just because you have confidence you're going to get any woman. No, I mean you're not going to get most women. The vast majority of women will not want you, no matter what you look like or what you're doing. The vast majority aren't going to want you.
Right.
So, but the point is that again, you lose nothing by trying, and you potentially gain like untold benefits, right?
Right.
So it's like the risk reward ratio is just totally lopsided. You got to go for it, man. Just ignore their stupid checklists. They don't mean anything. They're emotion driven. So go over there, spike her emotion, make her laugh. You're gonna have her, in the palm of your hand if you do it right.
Right. And I always like the reason I always bring up the job analogy is because I like to think about this pragmatically. Are you going to look at a job listing that says, hey, we need 10 years of experience of this specific thing. We need a master's degree if possible. Like we need this, all this stuff. And you have a bachelor's degree, you have 7 years or whatever. Are you not going to apply? Because, oh, I don't have 10 years of experience, so I don't want to waste
Right.
the recruiter's time. No, you're not. You're going to click
Right.
apply. You're going to write what you've got. You're going to do it. And hey, guess what? You're going to get a job like one day doing what you just did, right? So apply the same thing to dating.
Yeah.
Just try. Like
Yeah.
there's 2.6
Try it.
billion women out there that are of age and that are probably single. So just figure out you'll find one. I mean, it's not you just do
Yeah.
your thing. And again, like that mindset of like I'm afraid that she'll say no, like that worries me because that means that your mindset in other parts of your life are also hey like I don't want to take this risk because of it's not actually a risk. You know what I mean? So that it's and it's like
Right.
that needs to be checked and introspected and figured out, like discussed, and maybe inspected further.
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah. Right click and inspect that for sure.
but yeah, with a Gen 2 OpenRC solution, you know what I mean? So, like, I don't know what you mean.
Oh man.
But anyway, did you have anything else you wanted to say for today's episode, or what are we thinking?
No, I think that was a great episode. I'm happy with that.
Right. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for checking out the video. Make sure to like it and subscribe to the channel. We're going to be giving you some clips and some more content as we are to maneuver this life. So take care, everyone.
Absolutely. Thanks for watching, guys.